Hello, everyone. I now call to order the regular meeting of the City Council and successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency and Housing Authority meeting of Tuesday, March 15th, 2022. Tonight is a special night. It's close to St. Patrick's Day, and we're very happy to have my friend Brendan Ford sing the national anthem. Brendan is a Costa Mesa resident, Costa Mesa business owner, and a Costa Mesa man about town. He's brought with him some friends, a gallery, if you will. And so I would like to remind everybody that applause is okay in the chambers. Let's rise, let's listen to Brendan give his national anthem. When the applause dies down, Councilmember Chavez will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much, Brendan. Beautiful job, as always. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So now is the time for a moment of solemn expression. Tonight, it will be led by Pastor Christine Wallington from the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Costa Mesa.
I don't know if you can see me, but you can at least hear me.
I can, yeah, we can hear you.
Wonderful. And let's bow our heads for those who are willing. As we continue to celebrate the diversity of your people in Costa Mesa, O Lord, we proclaim the Persian Nowruz, meaning new day. Lord, we come into this space seeking for that which is new, as a community seeking to once again come together in person to do the work of the people. May you continue to keep our leaders, our officers, our first responders, our teachers, our students, our parents, and our medical professionals safe. As we welcome this transition back into offices and public life, may we do so with a willingness to understand one another's struggles, and once again, another big transition. May we embrace this new day and continue to exercise justice with a high value on humanity, leadership with an openness to change, and help for those in need, with our focus always towards giving dignity. We thank you that you have protected Jesse and Jacob Bokeman, the couple from Costa Mesa that safely crossed the Ukrainian-Polish border with a 4-day-old infant during the beginnings of the war. And Lord, we lift up Ukraine into your hands, seeking your protection for those daring to fight for their freedom and independence. Please protect those seeking to flee. May they find the homes you have for them. And as we search for answers in this trying time, Lord, we seek your guidance and watch care of this meeting and our continued efforts to serve others in our beloved community. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor Wallington. That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Madam Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Let the record reflect that all council members are present, except for Council Member Harper, who is absent.
Okay, the record will so reflect. So for those of you that are here, if any of you, on the public hearing item number 1 regarding triangle square signage, or those of you that tuned on Zoom for the purpose of hearing that item, it's been withdrawn from this particular agenda and will be heard at a future date. But we still have plenty of stuff to do today, and we have 2 presentations. Our first presentation is a proclamation recognizing Nowruz. March 20th marks the first day of spring and is the beginning of a 13-day celebration celebrating Nowruz. Nowruz commemorates the new year for many Persian and Central Asian communities all over the world. Joining us tonight, we have the Farang Foundation's Orange County Chair, Ms. Marjane Afkami, and Farang's trustee, Ms. Anusha Oskian. The Farang Foundation is a member-supported, non-religious, non-political, not-for-profit organization established to celebrate and promote Iranian art. And we're going to present the proclamation, and then we're all going to take a photograph with you. We'll present it to you. But the proclamation, there's excerpts that I want to read. Nowruz originated in in ancient Persia more than 3,000 years ago, and marks the traditional Persian New Year, beginning on the vernal equinox, and celebrates the arrival of spring. Nowruz is a combination of 2 Persian words. The first, now, or no, means new, and the second, ruz, means day. Together they mean new day. During Nowruz, people wear new clothes, visit family, reconnect with community members, forgive past wrongs, and exchange gifts as a sign of peace and friendship. The Persian community that calls California and Costa Mesa home contributes to the strength and diversity of our city and our state. Let us join the Persian community and other Nowruz celebrators and wish them a prosperous new year ahead. So we have the proclamation. Now we're all going to come down, present it to you, and take a beautiful photograph that we will blast out on our social media. All right, that was fun. So our great police chief, Chief Ron Lawrence, can you believe that he's been here for 6 months? Let's give it up to Chief Lawrence. We're so lucky to have Chief Lawrence, and one of the things that he is doing as part of what he's initiating is updates to the council and assessments that he's done. So Chief Lawrence is going to deliver for us now a brief 6-month update. And so, Chief Lawrence, how's it been going for the last 6 months? What have you learned?
I've learned a lot, and it's been going outstanding, Mr. Mayor. And I'm honored to be your police chief. As soon as I can figure out this clicker, we'll get started. It's working on that, but not, okay, well, as long as you can see it. It's not up here, but it's all right. So it's an honor, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, to give a 6-month assessment of your police department. And I think it's appropriate that I share with you what I've learned over the last 6 months, and also share with you a little bit about where we're headed in the future. And I'll start by saying I've invited Captain LaPointe here with me. Her and Captain Bacala helped me lead the organization. We've got Roxy Fiad, my public affairs manager, in the audience, who put together the PowerPoint. And a good leader knows they don't have to have all the answers, but they surround themselves with brilliant people to get the job done, and that's what I've got. I adopted a fantastic police department with very capable people. So everything you like in this presentation is their doing. If there's things you don't like, it's my doing. And I also want to start, too, by saying that the police department doesn't operate in a vacuum. I want to thank my colleagues. Our city manager is a fantastic leader who's given me a lot of autonomy and latitude to run the police department. She's listened to things that I've needed. She's given me everything that I need to do to get the job done. And I want to thank her for her leadership, and Susan Price, all of my colleagues in finance and HR, the fire department. This is a great city team, and I'm honored to be a part of that bigger team. And the police department knows that we function really with those other departments in great harmony. So I'll start here with our mission statement, which I enjoyed. I didn't do this. This is not my doing. This was here when I got here. But I did highlight some of the phrases that I really like. So we're dedicated to protecting and improving the quality of life through effective partnerships and community policing. We're a people-focused police department, unwavering in our determination to provide professional public safety services with empathy, compassion, and care, while engaging our community to build upon great partnerships for a safer today and build a better tomorrow. When I got here, I was really pleased to see the amount of community engagement that your police department does. We really do a lot of outreach in building those partnerships. Our crime prevention unit participates in 36 neighborhood watch programs. We participate in events such as National Night Out, Coffee with a Cop, bicycle rodeos, and several others. We participated in an etching event where we etched catalytic converters along with Huntington Beach and Newport Beach. For free, 130 vehicles to help us in the recovery of catalytic converters and also to prevent those types of thefts. This year, for the first time, we participated in Shop with a Cop, and this is where we met with some at-risk youth. We were able to, through donations, they could have a $100 gift card at Target, and they shopped with a police officer to get things for Christmas for their families, and it was a very moving moment. IHOP provided a breakfast for them, and it was just a very special morning. And then, of course, we were involved in the Pink Patch program and the Movember to raise funds for cancer awareness in the police department. Our special events included OTS grant funding to help us with distracted driving, impaired driving, bicycle and pedestrian safety, and DUI checkpoints. We had 11 schools participate in the Walk to School event this year, which was really a lot of fun to be with those kids. And then, of course, we do other events such as the Orange County Marathon that goes from Newport Beach in through Costa Mesa. Our social media platforms are very robust. You can see there we have nearly 40,000 followers on Nextdoor, and between Facebook and Instagram, we have another nearly 40,000 respectively. So social media is another platform for us to use to communicate and outreach to our community, and we have a very good program to communicate important messages in that way. Now, we have a lot of youth programs, but one that I'm particularly impressed with is our Explorer Post. This is ages 14 through 20. These are kids who can participate in the police department. They're immersed in the department. They learn about things regarding how we operate in the police department, on the radio, crime scene investigation, to really determine if this is something for them. But it's also those that don't get into law enforcement. It offers a lot of leadership, a lot of accountability, and a lot of pathway for them to be successful as adults. Our traffic safety unit, this is something I really want to highlight here. 7 of our 8 traffic officers earned their Mothers Against Drunk Drivers Century Award. That means they made over 100 DUI arrests themselves last year. And you'll see there in the bottom left quadrant, the DUI arrests. In early 2021, my predecessor, Chief Glass, reinstituted the DUI enforcement team because of staffing. We got staffing to a point where he could do that. And you can see the remarkable difference. In 2020, we had 433 DUI arrests. In 2021, that increased by 152% to 1,093. I've heard a few times people refer to some story on social media that Costa Mesa has more DUI drivers per capita than other communities around us. And here's the thing to remember, that the only way a DUI statistic is created is through an arrest. So really what that tells you is that we're being proactive at enforcement, and we're arresting more DUI drivers than some of our neighboring communities are. There's DUI drivers in every community, but we're doing a successful job at getting them off of our roadway. So when you hear that stat, it's actually a good thing to hear. Shortly after I arrived at Costa Mesa, we had an opportunity, my executive team and I, to spend 3 days on a team building workshop offsite. And this was an opportunity for us to kind of back up, build trusting relationships, and decide, okay, what's the future of Costa Mesa moving forward? And we'll have those each year to make sure that we're remaining on track. But we developed a strategic plan. We reviewed our mission and vision statements to make sure that we're still in alignment with our community's expectations. We worked on improving communications, renewed our department newsletter, producing internal training videos, increasing our effectiveness of our executive and supervisor meetings so that we're not just meeting to meet, but that each meeting has a purpose and that we're actually focused on our mission and our vision. We committed ourselves to enhance our crime analysis coordination with patrol operations, expanding recruitment and retention efforts, succession planning for future transition, which those last 2 bullet points are something I'm going to spend a little time on. We've accomplished a lot over the last 6 months, and I say we, it's not me, this is the team. The men and women of your police department do incredible work, and I'm just so proud of them. We've increased the recognition of great police work by staff. What I came to realize is that there's tremendous work happening all the time. And police officers and dispatchers, they're very humble people. And so we have taken a concerted effort to make sure we're recognizing that great work. We've improved roadway safety by removing DUI drivers from the streets. Successful completion of an exhaustive property and evidence room audit throughout the police department. We've gone through numerous policies and procedure updates. Having a new police chief affords the opportunity for me to go through each policy to make sure it's within federal and state law and make sure it says what we want it to say. Is that policy helping us police this community? We have updated our mobile data computers in our patrol vehicles, which is anticipated to be done by this summer. We've funded and are acquiring a mobile command vehicle, which is being built as we speak. We hope to have that in our possession by the fall or winter of this year. We've taken a balanced approach for internal selections to assignments, increased and improved internal supervisor and field training officer meetings to make them more effective. The rewrap of our current patrol fleet is nearly complete. You might remember the full black cars are now being transitioned to more traditional black and white patrol cars. That's almost done. An upgrade of our internal computers and monitors is almost complete. And we've begun regional efforts with our federal and state partners and our county partners to address illegal fentanyl distribution in Orange County. So when I look at our organization moving forward, the biggest areas of concern that I really want to focus on and need to focus on for our future is succession planning, recruitment, and retention. Making sure that we have leaders prepared to fulfill future positions through retirement and attrition, and that we're recruiting the right people and retaining the right people for our organization. Our staff turnover last calendar year, for example, we had 20 retirements or resignations, 15 promotions, and 27 new hires. Already here we are in the middle of March, and we're on track to meet and exceed this number. We have 20 identified folks already throughout this calendar year who will be retiring. Moving forward, we're committed to maintaining our community trust to ensure that we hire people and promote people who are people-focused. Succession planning, preparing for our future. We are working on reorganizing the police department to maximize our efficiencies, to make sure we're not just doing things the same old way. Having me on board affords us the opportunity to relook and rethink how we build for the future. How do we work with our community partners in making sure that our police department's the very best and that we're forward-thinking? We're working on a new patrol shift for better deployment of our resources, to reduce overtime and for staff retention. We're going to leverage technology and equipment such as license plate reader cameras in our BAIT program. And the camera program, which came at the suggestion of some council members, we've actually started that research and development already. And you'll see in the budget process for July, I'm asking for $60,000 from asset forfeiture to start a pilot program for cameras in our city to help us solve crime. Our facility upgrades to include our range remodel, our media room remodel, which is almost complete, and our property and evidence room upgrades as a result of our audit. Fleet improvements, also again at the suggestion of some council members, we will continue to research alternatives to fuel vehicles, looking at electric vehicle or battery operated vehicles. I think there's some room for success in that area. Our organizational alignment with crime analysis to improve our focus. We'll continue to collaborate with city departments and our community stakeholders to make sure that we understand what their expectations of us are, to make sure that we're meeting those needs and that we're being responsive. We'll continue to celebrate our successes. And as mentioned last Tuesday night at our study session, the fire chief and I spent quite a bit of time talking about our shared policy and operational oversight of the 911 Communications Center in a unified command of the police and the fire department. So in a brief 10-minute presentation, that's kind of your update on the police department. And I'll tell you, I'm proud to be their police chief. I'm proud to be your police chief. And as I mentioned, I've adopted a great department. So we're here to serve, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I like that picture. I'm doing the Judd Nelson fist pump there. That's good. That's beautiful. Well, thank you very much. Let's give it up for the chief.
Thank you.
Council, do you have any questions for the chief? I think if you could just push your button. Mayor Pro Tem Mar.
Not so much a question, but I do want to congratulate you and the chief before you for making tremendous progress on staffing. That's been something that we've been talking about in the city for the last 10 years. And so, we're going to talk about staffing a little bit more later today, but seeing where the police department is at right now is pretty incredible. We didn't think we could ever get out of the hole, but the fact that we've added as many folks as we have in the last 2 years has really been a testament to the leadership in the department. And I think probably some of the creative ways that you guys are going after people and talking to folks on campuses, and the emphasis on recruiting is very much appreciated, because we can't accomplish any of the public safety goals that we want to if we don't have the people. And to have seen us finally kind of come out of that big hole is tremendous. So thank you for that, and thank you to the staff who have made that happen.
Thank you. And frankly, a lot of the credit goes to City Council for supporting us and helping us make that happen, and our city manager. So thank you for that.
Council, does anybody else have anything they want to say? Any questions, kudos, or anything like that? Chief, I've got a quick question for you. So last week we were at the memorial service for Officer Nick Vella, and one of the things that was discussed was all of the commendations that he received during his career. And you mentioned earlier in your discussion about giving credit, and for really good police work. What is the process for getting a commendation, if we do have a process, in the city of Costa Mesa for a police officer?
We do have a process, and a citizen can make that commendation, as well as internal supervisor or manager. And so we'll take them and make sure that it's fitting of whatever level of category. But we want to make sure that we celebrate those as well. It's one thing to receive them, It's another thing to make sure we're giving proper accolades. So you'll see that in the future on social media, our social media, us recognizing great work, not just by our police officers, but our dispatchers, our record staff, our CSI. And so anyone can make a commendation if they see good work. And we see it all the time. It's just, there's so much amazing work that goes on. And I'm just so pleased. And we do have citizens that give a lot of commendations. So it's very well received.
That's great. And so how do they do it? Do they go on the website, or what do they do to give a commendation to a police officer?
Yep, they can go on the website. They can call us. They can email us. Any avenue is accepted.
Okay. And obviously council can do that too. So that's good. Okay. That's good to remember. And then we're going to be doing listening tours. I know that we're just kind of starting to figure it out, but do you want to talk a little bit about what we have in mind, or do you want me to steal your thunder?
No, I think that's a great idea. In fact, if you'd like to start, I'll be happy to add on.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go to all of the districts in Costa Mesa, and all of the council members will have an opportunity to participate, and we're basically going to take Chief Lawrence on tour. And the purpose is going to be, we might include some type of a presentation like the one you presented, but the main purpose is just to have Chief Lawrence, have him get access to the community where they are in their district, and to listen to issues, recurring public safety issues in neighborhoods throughout the city. So we're going to be doing 3 of those. We're going to match the districts, 2 districts at a time, over the next 6 months, and to be determined when and which district and where we start.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity for us to hear directly from the community what's going on, and making sure that we're being responsive to their needs. The opening prayer mentioned being open to change, and I like that phrase, because your police department is open to change, and sometimes it's us that needs to change, and sometimes we can bring the right resources to help the problem.
All right, Chief. Thank you. I don't see anything else. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to go to public comments. Public comments will be heard at this time, and they're for matters that are not on the agenda. And everybody will get 3 minutes maximum. You'll get a 1-minute warning at the 1-minute mark. Try to wrap it up, because at 3 minutes, there's no grace. The mic will be cut off. We'll go and get comments from people in the chambers first, and then we'll turn to Zoom, and we'll hear from the public on Zoom. Sir, you have the floor.
Good evening, Council. I want to start by mentioning the the Nowruz proclamation that was made at the beginning of this event. I just wanted to identify myself not as Iranian or Persian, but as a Middle Eastern American, and to just recognize a lot of what Middle Eastern Americans have gone through in this country over the course of its history, but also especially over the course of the last 21 years. And so I just wanted to deeply appreciate the proclamation that recognizes, Middle Eastern Americans, Iranian Americans, and Persian Americans, especially as we see a lot of geopolitical tensions oftentimes rising to local prejudice in our communities and domestically. And so I wanted to appreciate that. I want to change subjects for a moment and actually also talk about some state legislation that's going on in Sacramento, and I will send a follow-up email to all council members. And I actually want to tie this into what Chief Lawrence said regarding, using police appropriately and effectively. And so right now there's 2 really exciting bills that are going through the state legislature that I think Costa Mesa would be interested in. One is a speed safety camera pilot program, and the other one is a noise camera program that I think will be turned into a pilot. And so I think both of these are something that Costa Mesa should look into as something that it could be a part of. The speed safety camera is going to only be large cities, mostly Los Angeles and San Francisco. But if that goes well in those cities, it could be expanded statewide. And I think the noise camera one as well the same thing could happen with. And I know a lot of Orange County cities are pushing for that bill. And I think the thing to mention is that we know that speed is an incredibly dangerous issue and topic that we see in our communities, and also noise in terms of the quality of our life. And if we can effectively use cameras, we can better use police resources to actually be investigating crimes and doing the better work that I think that they need to be doing rather than speed enforcement. There's a number of other bills in the state legislature, including the Vehicle Omnibus Bill. It's a Laura Friedman bill that eliminates the ability to have bike registration within cities, also allows cyclists to take the leading pedestrian interval, something that we mentioned at the last council meeting. That's another great bill. And so without going through my whole list of 17 bills on here, just know that I'll follow up with you, but there's some really great work being done in Sacramento, and I would love to see Costa Mesa take an active position, and because it really makes a difference. And I can say that as someone who's working on these day in, day out during my 9 to 5. So thank you so much, and I have a good day.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Does anyone else in the chambers wish to do public comment? I don't see anybody coming up. Oh, yes. Yes, sir. You have the floor. Hey, Manny, could you bring that down? Pull that down? Because I can't see. It blocks my view.
Hello.
Okay, sir, you have the floor.
Hello. My name is Chris Corum. I live at 360 La Pearl Place. I'm giving you guys an update on my rekindle fire. After speaking last week at the meeting, I was hoping to get a call back from someone from the city. 2 days after, I got a call from the chief, Dan Stefano. We talked a little bit about my fire for about 10 minutes. I told him my concerns about my fire. He explained how every fireman or trained professionals, which I agreed. I have many friends who are firemen and police officers. My childhood friend was the chief of police in this town, Tom Gazy. I explained how during the stand and wind conditions and low humidity, someone should have stayed at my fire at the scene for a minimum of an hour, or at least come back to make sure the fire did not rekindle, which it did, actually burning my house down. At the second fire, Thanksgiving morning, one of my friends FaceTimed me from the scene. He walked over to Chris Coates, the battalion chief on the fire, let me speak to him. I asked him, hey, what happened? Because I spoke to him earlier the night, the first fire. He said, it was the wind. I go, the wind started my fire? Well, amazing. Okay, the wind alone, whatever. Look, I know this was a mistake. It isn't the first time a rekindle fire has happened in Costa Mesa. About 2 years ago, 3086 Warren Lane burnt down from a rekindle fire. I was told the city paid to rebuild this home. I've spoken to 3 different attorneys, all of which have told me my case is blatantly simple. They would just be taking my money. They said I should come straight to the city and try and work out some sort of settlement. That's what I'm here doing. I'm trying to save the city money. I will get an attorney if I have to. When I returned to my home a few days later after Thanksgiving, I found a life hazard, do not enter, caution around tape around my backyard. No one ever contacted me regarding this thing around my house. I came down to the city to get a copy of the fire report. Amazingly, 30 minutes later, Chris Coates shows up at my door. After the second fire, they stood watch at the fire for 3 hours, and they came back later that day to check my home. You know, Chris Coates told me that my fire was being used for a training procedure at the cost of my home. I hope something's happening behind closed doors, because I'm out of the loop at the moment. I lost 90% of all my belongings from this home fire, and the salvageable stuff smells like smoke. 30 years in the same home, you accumulate lots of things. Many things, some I don't even remember what I've lost. We've lost our bicycles, my surfboards, motorcycles, tools, product for our hair salon, which you own here on 17th Street in Costa Mesa. As a 62-year-old man, I didn't think I'd be rebuilding my home. I wanted to be spending time with my family, my elderly parents, and I hope we can get a resolve in this. I really hope something can happen here. I'm really expecting somebody to give me a call back, or besides just the battalion chief. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the chambers that wishes to speak? Yes, you just come on up if you wish to speak, yeah. Anybody who wants to speak, just come up to the podium.
So this would be an appropriate time to talk about the strategic plan, sustainability for the city?
Well, no, yeah, you can speak to items on the consent calendar, yes.
So this would be good time?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
All right, thank you. I feel a lot of desperation right now, a lot of problems in the world. We just mentioned Ukraine. And it's a feeling that disasters are occurring all the time. Fires, drought, mass immigrations, due to an unlivable, changing environment. Turns out that scientists say that cities have 75% of the opportunity of impact to correct the problem. I would like to see Costa Mesa take a stronger action in this direction. I read, not that you haven't done things already, I compliment Costa Mesa on the hiring the sustainability manager, being a Tree City USA. I've read that in the lead for buildings, that's good. And Chief Lawrence mentioning electric cars. I tried to persuade the council in getting electric motorcycles, but I guess that's going to come hopefully in time. They happen to be stealthier and faster than regular vehicles today, surprisingly. So according to scientists, we've got until 2030 to reduce carbon emissions. 2030 is cited as the year when climate changes become irreversible if we stay at our current rate of greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, what can we do? Well, the thing I saw was that we've drafted a CAAP, and I never remember what that stands for. Is it Climate Adaptation and Action Policy? Close. Plan. I've noticed Long Beach has one. I would like to have one. I noticed Long Beach put theirs out for review. Is it possible we can put ours out for review for public comment? A lot of ideas out there. I can go just through a few I've got. I would like to see the city address all areas that it has control over that affect climate. Energy independence, joining the Irvine, the OCPA. I think that's critical. Solar panel installation and an ease of installation. The city can encourage it and teach homeowners how to do it, maybe even fund it. Savings, showing the savings for individual households and citizens. In this plan, CAAP can cover all that. It can become a very useful tool for helping us as citizens achieve goals, these climate action goals. Improvements in transportation, bicycles, electric cars, charging station, walking and bike corridors. I noticed there's charging stations right out front. Didn't know that. That's wonderful. Thank you. Is it my?
That's it. Thank you, though. Thank you, though, very much. Good comments. Okay, anyone else from inside the chambers that wishes to speak? No. On Zoom, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Rena Cuthill, please.
Ms. Cuthill, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, this is my first time making a public comment, so excuse me if I'm not too well versed. Thank you so much, City Council, and thank you, Arliss, for inviting me to make a public comment. Anyways, my name is Rena Cuthill. I am the Neighboring Initiative Director at Trellis, and I would like to invite the community to join us next Monday at 6:30 at 1718 Monrovia Avenue. Again, at 6:30, 1718 Monrovia Avenue, at our intentional neighbors gathering. So what that is we would like to gather any neighbors who are interested in participating in Love Costa Mesa Day. And that meeting specifically, we are going to be brainstorming ways to bless neighbors in needs, improving our neighborhoods, and we'll be submitting those projects live to our lovecostamesa.org website. So if you guys are interested in joining us next Monday, feel free to reach out to me at my email. My email is Reina, REINA, at wearetrellis.com. Again, it's Reina, REINA, at wearetrellis.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great job. Anyone else on Zoom?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Wow. Okay. Close public comment. Okay, now we move to the council member committee reports, comments, and suggestions. The first up would be from District 5, Councilmember Arliss Reynolds.
There it is. Okay. Thank you. I want to share a couple committee updates. As liaison to the Transportation Corridor Agency, big update from our last meeting is that we did vote to approve a 7-year strategic plan for the TCA. I think it's their first 7-year strategic plan. Our city clerk forwarded the link to that if any of you all want to read through the nitty-gritty on it. It's pretty straightforward, a focus on paying down the debt for TCA, a focus on environmental stewardship for all of the mitigation lands they have. I've mentioned that before to this council. And then, continuing to stay on top of technology for cost-effective operations. Happy to answer any questions you have if you want to dig into that strategic plan. No specific updates, but I do want to thank the members of our Bikeway and Walkability Committee for their continued engagement and efforts on active transportation, in particular the pedestrian master plan and sort of strategies and advocacy for those efforts. We got a letter to council where one of the committee members or a few of the committee members did an analysis on funding for active transportation. So I just want to encourage, I thought that was really interesting in terms of sort of the pace of our funding in terms of progress and implementing our active transportation plan. So I want to encourage council to read that letter if you haven't dug into it already. And I want to thank all of the community members who applied for committee positions. It's always great on those committees to have a good mix of people who have been involved in committees and bring that experience, but also new people who bring fresh ideas to those committees. So thanks to everyone who applied, and I look forward to seeing some new names as well, getting involved in the city. A few upcoming events. So tomorrow's a busy day. I'll be going to Santa Ana for a little scouting trip. The Orange County Soccer Club is doing a ribbon cutting for one of the soccer pitches that they built for Santa Ana. This is sort of an indoor court in an outdoor location. And that exact field, as you might remember from probably a year ago, the Orange County Soccer Club is funding similar fields in other cities, and there's an opportunity for Costa Mesa, of course, if we can find the space to build a similar pitch. I've shared a couple locations that I think could be viable with staff, and so I'm eager to see what vetting we can do there and see if we have an opportunity to add another soccer field in Costa Mesa. Particularly one accessible to our children by foot and by bike. Later in the evening, I'll be attending with Councilmember Jeff Harlan, I think. Yes, an event hosted by our school board members where they've brought together a coalition for bike safety issues, I think particularly focused on e-bike safety. So I'm really excited to see kind of that advocacy growing and the partnership between council, the school board, and other community members on that issue. Community walks and bikes are back for real. We're sticking to our 4th weekend of the month, so mark your calendars for Saturday, March 26th. We're going to do a community walk. And then Sunday, March 27th, we'll get back on the bike for community bike rides. I'm really excited about these. We're going to honor Women's History Month with these, and thanks in advance to the Costa Mesa Historical Society, who are going to put some facts on women's history in Costa Mesa together for us. And those community walks and bikes will continue on the 4th Saturdays and Sundays of every month. I should also thank our planning commissioner, Jimmy Vivar, for really pushing me to get walks going, because not everyone has a bike or can ride a bike. Thanks to community members for all the comments we've gotten on climate action and resiliency. Certainly an important issue for all of us. It's one of our priorities for council. I'd be interested, just knowing that Earth Day and Arbor Day are coming up next month, if we can get an update tonight or in the next few days on any planned events we have for Earth Day and Arbor Day. I know we usually do some tree planting. I'm sure our sustainability manager has some stuff in store. And then finally, on a related topic, I did want to give a congratulations to our Mayor Pro Tem, Andrea Marr. She caught me on her LinkedIn this morning. I saw that she was appointed to the board of directors for the Alliance to Save Energy, which is a national bipartisan coalition of government leaders, environmental leaders, businesses, really focused on advancing energy efficiency across our country. On our last call, we had to talk about, what is electricity better or is fossil fuel better? Energy efficiency is the best, the cleanest, the cheapest. So having Councilmember Marr serving on our council and also in that role, I think is just a testament to the expertise we have in our council, and I'm proud to serve with her. So congrats.
Way to go. Thanks for bringing that up. That's great. Okay, next up, who do we have next? I lost my place. Okay, now we have council member from District 4, Manuel Chavez. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens, and thank you everyone today who's joining our meeting. It's nice to have the sunlight back out during these meetings, not having it really dark. So a couple things happened these past 2 weeks that I want to just make note of. First things first, I had a great time this Saturday attending the Pony Baseball opening with Councilmembers Gameros, Mayor Pro Tem Mar, Mayor Stevens, and both our Chief Lawrence and Chief Stefano. Really great way to start your weekend is seeing these young boys and girls get hyped for baseball season begin again. In a more somber tone, we did also attend the dedication for John Altabelly Stadium at OCC. Member Harlan was there with us as well. And it's just a reminder of the importance that community and sports has to creating Costa Mesa vibes. You know, everyone really came together for that celebration. It was one of those moments where everyone kind of puts aside everything and just shows dedication to someone's life that really shaped the lives of those in Costa Mesa, and it was very beautiful to see. Alongside that note, I joined the mayor and Chief Lawrence and City Manager Phil Harrison at attending the memorial for Officer Nicholas Vela, who passed away recently from a helicopter crash in Huntington Beach. That was a very sobering but unifying moment as well, one where we really saw law enforcement and the community come together in honor of a fallen officer. And it was pretty timely because, as you may know, in Costa Mesa, we too have had an accident with a helicopter crash where we lost 2 officers, Ketchum and Leibolt, who the park, Ketchum Leibolt Park in my district is named after. And it was one of those reminders that we should really appreciate what law enforcement does for our community, that fact that they put their lives on the line, and the fact that they are also part of what makes Costa Mesa a safe community, just like John Altabelly. And just to pivot to more positive points, I don't want to end it all sober. We are having a lot of good community events coming up in District 4. 2 weeks from now at Shalimar Park will be our annual Shalimar cleanup. It'll be March 26th from 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. It's really a good time for the community to go help out and clean out some old stuff from the community in that part of town and have a show of force with our city staff there, showing everyone that we're supporting them and whatnot. So please attend if you can. March 26th, 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Shalimar Park is where we're going to be at. And for now, those are my comments. Thanks, Mayor Stevens.
All right, so next up, we've got from District 2, Councilmember Lauren Gameros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to also speak about some activities that we did this weekend and the weekend before last. We have a really large youth sports community in this city. And when we have the leaders of our city come and represent and engage with the community, it really means a lot. You know, as a council up here, we have a chance to sit and look at items that are important. We have time to think about it. But our emergency services personnel don't get that same luxury. They have to strap boots on every morning. They don't know if they're going to take their life in their hands. They don't know if they're going to have to save someone's life. And they don't get the same luxuries to react like we do, basically at our leisure before the event takes place. And to see them come out in our community with smiling faces, engaging the young children in sports, I just wanted to take a moment and recognize the police chief and the fire chief for coming out, not only themselves to represent, but they brought their staff out. And it really makes a big difference in our community, and it makes a big difference up here with the council when we know that we have good, strong, community-based representation. So I just want to thank both chiefs for coming out and engaging with the community. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember. And now from District 6, Councilmember Jeffrey Harlan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. let's start with some good news. Not that there's bad news I have to report, but let's start with good news. I just heard before council started that the Costa Mesa High School cheerleading program won the inaugural state Southern Section CIF championship recently. So I want to offer my congratulations to that team and that program led by Corey Johnson. It's a 23-member co-ed team. They've had much success over the last couple of years winning CIF championships. Like I said, this is the first statewide championship. So hopefully we can get them to come in here and honor them for that. Second, I wanted to remind people we've got a town hall tomorrow evening at the Costa Mesa Tennis Center. We had our first one this past Saturday. Mayor Pro Tem Mar and I attended and listened to folks give their input on what they wanted for our next operator, as well as potential facility improvements and operational improvements at the tennis center. That's going to be hosted by our recreation planning staff, and I believe that's at 5:30 tomorrow. They're nodding their heads, yes. And there's also a survey online that you can access from the city's website. So if you can't make it, please provide your input that way. And then lastly, I just want to ask of staff, public services in particular, if we can get an update on some of the east side improvements or proposed improvements related to transportation and traffic calming. And in particular, I'm thinking of the traffic calming pilot projects for 18th Street and Cabrillo. And then I know that there's been some studies done for traffic calming at Tustin, at Woodland, and then 20th Street at Raymond. So if we can get an update on that, I would appreciate it. And then I guess lastly, I'll do one more. I will echo the comments of Councilmember Gameros. I think it was, and Councilmember Chavez, it was really a meaningful event to be at Altabelly Park on Saturday. You know, you want to celebrate something like that. I think that the OCC team and staff has really done a tremendous job, and it's really a great honor. But it's also important that our city staff, and in particular public safety, were there. I noticed a lot of our fire department there. Thank you for bringing the apparatus to hang the American flag. That was definitely appreciated. And Chief Lawrence, thank you for being there as well. You know, it's like it was noted, a somber event, but at the same time, both uplifting to see the community come together like that. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. And now we have from District 3, Mayor Pro Tem Andrea Mar. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. Yeah, I was going to say it was a busy weekend for council, but it was a busy weekend for the chiefs too. Actually, we saw them in a number of events. So as Councilmember Harlan mentioned, we were at the tennis center on Saturday morning to hear from the community, and we'll be doing another one of those tomorrow at 5:30. But it was, you know, it was actually really great to spend some time. I'm not a tennis player by any means, so it was great to spend some time at the tennis center and kind of dream up a little bit about what could change, what could be there in the future, how we would expand. I had no idea that some tennis players find the pickleball noise annoying because it's a different rhythm than tennis playing. Anyway, so if you have comments on pickleball, I'm sure you'll send them my way. But then, you know, immediately before that, we were kind of on the other side of T-Winkle Park for the pony baseball opening that was mentioned. And they've got a couple of ideas there. Addition of some batting cages, some drainage concerns. So that kind of got my wheels spinning this week about T-Winkle in general. So apologies in advance to staff, because I know that this is going to sound like I'm nagging you about a bunch of projects, but we've been talking about the skate park expansion, and the engineering and design that's required. I think that was in the CIP last year. So kind of hoping we can actually get into some construction here soon. We've been talking about maintenance of the ponds. There were some funds in the CIP from last year too. So now I'm not picking on recreation. Now that's public services. Mayor Stevens mentioned a year ago about how do we activate that amphitheater a little bit more. Last year when we were at the Love Costa Mesa Day, the shade structure over Angels Playground was looking a little worn down. So I think now is the opportunity to do something really cool where we pull all of those things together and maybe give T-Winkle a little bit of a facelift. So that is a ridiculously well-used park. On Saturday afternoons, you should see there's probably like 17 different groups doing something in that park. And I think we have an opportunity to kind of tie all of those disparate projects together. And would love to see how we can kind of communicate that and put that in the CIP in a way that makes it look like, we're not just doing piecemeal projects, we're thinking about the broader vision of Tewinkle. So just to pile on a staff a little bit more, because I know you don't have enough on your plates, you need my bright ideas. So next bright idea, the assistant city manager made fun of my jacket as being my power jacket, and also the jacket I wear sometimes when I go off about things. So next brilliant idea. I've been meeting with a number of businesses who are expressing concern about their temporary use permits that were granted during COVID to expand their patio, to maybe not have as much parking, to put up some kind of a shade structure, to do all of these things. It's going to expire in December, and they're sort of trying to plan ahead for what does that look like. That's the breweries on Randolph. That's some of the restaurants that many of us frequent. It's coming up a lot. I've had 4 different meetings in the last 2 weeks, and I think we heard a lot of angst in December of last year from a couple of folks. Dick Churches was here, and Memphis was here, talking about really, if they hadn't been able to expand the patio, if they hadn't had all of the outdoor dining, they might not be restaurants anymore in Costa Mesa. They may not exist. So with all of that said, I was thinking about that, and when we get this letter from the Bikeway and Walkability Committee that Councilmember Reynolds mentioned, and the letter basically says, if we fund the active transportation plan at $1 million a year, it's going to take us like 27 years to get all the way through it. If this is something that we as a city are considering a priority that we talk about all of the time from this dais, then how do we actually put some money towards those things? So I want to throw this out as an idea to council. Again, staff's going to kill me later, but I want to throw this out as an idea to council, and I'm like one of the last ones to talk, so I'm hoping maybe after the meeting, since it's a relatively short meeting, when we have a second opportunity for council member comments, that maybe you all could chime in if you think this is a good idea or not. And something we talk about further during our strategic plan, but I'd really like to see a way in which we potentially think differently about parking minimums and maybe even use in lieu fees to fund active transportation. So maybe you don't build all the parking, but we help fund that active transportation plan. So that's my brilliant idea for the day. I'm curious what council thinks. Feel free to weigh in, and we can talk about it more during strategic planning. And I'm gonna hide before the assistant city manager starts throwing things at me. Last but not least, thank you for the folks who sent emails and talked about sustainability. I have some real concerns about the governance of the Orange County Power Authority. So if you want to talk to me about that offline, I'm more than happy to express my concerns. But we are doing a tremendous amount, and I'd love to see Ms. Alfaworki give a little mini presentation or something to the council, because we've got a ton of sustainability projects in progress, and it'd be nice to sum those all up for Earth Day. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, I get to talk after that, and I do support your idea. I think that there's obviously a relationship between parking and active transportation, and so I'd like to see that come forward and as to talk more about that as a council. So now I've got a number of things I want to reference. Many of them have been discussed before, but it was a very moving memorial that we had at the Honda Center for Huntington Beach Officer Nick Vela. It was great to go there with Councilmember Chavez and the police chief and City Manager Farrell Harrison, and then many members of our police department. I'm sure it meant a lot to the Huntington Beach Police Department to have so many agencies there and have such a good representation from the city of Costa Mesa. I was very proud of that, and I'm glad that we provided his family who were there and also his colleagues at the Huntington Beach Police Department some comfort. That was on March 8th, and kind of coincidentally, on March 10th, was the 35th anniversary of the tragic helicopter crash that took the life of Dave Ketchum and Mike Leibold, who was also mentioned by Councilmember Chavez. So it's really very coincidental that happened around the same time, but it gives us an opportunity to reflect on the ultimate sacrifice of officers Ketchum and Leibold, and also to focus on that our police officers all police officers, but our police officers take their lives risk their lives every day for us, and to thank them for that and give them some gratitude for that. Now on to some fun stuff. Yes, I've been throwing out a lot of first pitches, and so far I haven't thrown any of them in the dirt. They've been pretty good pitches, and for Pony I have some video evidence of that. So Little League was great. That was on March 5th. A terrific day, and everything's going strong with that. It was great, as Councilmember Gamero said, to have the police chief and the fire chief and members of the fire department out there giving low fives and high fives. I also want to recognize, though, Councilmember Gameros, who, in the time that I've been here, I always loved going to those events, but he really took it up to the next level. I think initiated the public safety for being there. And then we went to Pony. He organized us to bring a bunch of giveaways and city swag, so that was great. And today, though, I threw out the first pitch at the Costa Mesa Mustangs game. They played Calvary Chapel. Again, another strike. And they are playing Estancia this coming Monday, the 21st at 3:30 at Angel Stadium. So anybody who wants to go to that should be really fun. As some of the other council members mentioned, it was a very moving ceremony at OCC on Saturday to dedicate John Altabelly Park. John Altabelly, if people don't know, perished in the helicopter crash with Kobe and the members of his Mamba team. And he coached at OCC for 27 years. And take it for somebody who has been coached by many baseball coaches. A baseball coach has a great influence on the players that they coach. And for 27 years in our community, he really left his mark and a great legacy. So it's great that he's being honored with the naming of the park. More sports news. I'm excited to say that Newport Beach Sage Hill girls basketball team won the state championship. They were the only team in Orange County, boys or girls, to win the state championship. They're the only team from Newport, I believe this is right, from Newport or Costa Mesa to win the state championship since 1991 when Estancia won. So over 30 years. And you might say, Mayor, they're in Newport Beach. Why are you mentioning Sage Hill? Well, the player who hit the winning shot that got them to the state finals is Kat Righeimer. And some of you may remember her father, Jim Righeimer, who is a former mayor and was on the council. So she's a Costa Mesa resident, and they wouldn't have won the state championship without her. And by the way, many of those players on that team also played in the Mamba program. So they've been through a lot, and it's great that they got a victory. Last meeting, I was remiss because you may remember that we had the fastest public hearing item in the history of the city of Costa Mesa. And it was the redistricting. And our city clerk did an awesome job through that process. And it was only a 5-minute, the only reason it was such a easy 5-minute public hearing item is because of the hard work that she did and working with a consultant for the last year to get us to that point. It's hard to make something look easy. So congratulations. Thank you very much for your work. Happy St. Patrick's Day. My mom would kill me if I didn't say Happy St. Patrick's Day to you all. And then finally, what I want to say is this. This is personal. It marks approximately a year since I was appointed. You may remember I was appointed on the wee hours of the morning on St. Patrick's Day. And I just want to thank council. It's been an absolute honor and a joy to serve and with staff as the mayor for this last year. You are a great bunch. You're smart, thoughtful, and you're respectful of the public. You're respectful of each other and me and the staff. And so it's been a good year, and the best is yet to come. So, City Manager report, Ms. Farrell Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of updates that I wanted to share with you. First, congratulations, Mary, in your first year. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and I was very happy to see you in this position, and you've done a fantastic job. I'm very supportive of staff, and thank you for all the comments tonight. From all of you, really, just sharing your appreciation and your gratitude for the work that staff does in all the departments, in particular public safety, understanding the risks that they face every day in their jobs that many of us don't face. And Councilmember Gameros, I had never really thought of it the way that you said it tonight, that and the rest of us in our responsibilities, we do have an opportunity to prepare for something that's happening, and we have some lead time, but that's not the case for our public safety partners. So thank you for mentioning that. Even for me, who's been in government for 30 years and worked in full service cities, multiple of them, that's a very perceptive and really sentimental statement. It makes a big difference. Thank you. I wanted to personally congratulate Michelle Richards. Mayor Stevens and Mayor Pro Tem Moore were there to celebrate, along with some staff from the OC Fair, and of course, State Senator Dave Min. She received the Woman of the Year for the 37th State Senate District Award, and so we're really happy that one of our most important partners and stakeholders in the community was recognized in this way. The mayor was there on hand, along with Mayor Pro Tem Moore, to give her a city proclamation to recognize that honor. She was also named the OC Fair Leader in December of 2019, right before the pandemic. That forced the closure, of course, of the fair in 2020, but as we know, it came back in 2021, limited basis, but very successful. And of course, Michelle was a key partner with us, with the county and with the state, in making the fairgrounds available for COVID testing and vaccines, and even for food drives for those in need, which our council members were very involved in as well. And so again, congratulations to Michelle Richards, a great partner for us at the OC Fair. We wanted to highlight a new staff member, a position that you requested as council. We're really excited to have our very first ever art specialist, and that's Laurette Garner. She's our very first art specialist. As I mentioned, she'll be charged with implementing the city's Arts and Culture Master Plan within our Parks and Community Services Department. This is a position that we actually fast-tracked. It was in year 2 of the adopted master plan, and we brought it into year 1 just so she could take off running and get a lot of the groundwork done for all of the amazing things that we'll accomplish as we implement the Arts and Culture Master Plan. So Laurette, we're really excited to have you. She comes to us from the city of Carlsbad, where she was the Community Arts Coordinator. There she helped to develop school and summer programs in visual and performing arts. She helped implement the city's Arts and Culture Master Plan there, so she's very experienced. She managed arts education programming for the City Art Gallery, created and implemented free art-making events for the community, and made presentations to the Arts Commission. So as you can see, she has well-rounded experience implementing a plan, working even at the gallery level, and working in tandem with the commission. She was previously a grant administrator for the California Institute of the Arts and worked as an arts education program manager for the Lane Arts Council in Oregon. She has a bachelor's degree from San Francisco State University in both English literature and art history. And she has a master's degree in arts management from the University of Oregon. We could not be more proud and happy to have snatched Laurette into our grip here. And so we're so happy to have you, and just welcome to the city of Costa Mesa. This is your inaugural position, and you have an amazing opportunity with our council to establish the framework for the implementation of the Arts and Culture Master Plan. So I'm really excited to have her. And yes, Mayor Stevens, you have been throwing out some pretty impressive pitches, and we have the video.
Oh.
So John Stevens, there he is.
Right on the corner.
So Costa Mesa Pony Baseball was founded in 1996 and serves local communities within the Newport Mesa Unified School District. Thanks again to our public safety teams for being out there and being a part of the community. And last but not least, I did want to touch on a few things that you mentioned this evening. And of course, we have our tennis center town hall tomorrow night at 5:30. Thanks to everyone who came out to participate on Saturday, March 12th. There's also the survey that's on our website. So please, we'd like to hear back from you so that we can put the elements together for a new request for proposals that we will then bring to City Council for your review before we release to the public for a new tennis center operator after Hank and Maureen Lloyd operated it for 35 years. And so really looking forward to the community's impact and their contribution to this request for proposals. You mentioned a number of things, Council, this evening that you'd like for us to follow up on. I also wanted to congratulate you, Mayor Pro Tem Mar, on your recent appointment to the Energy Board. We're always excited when members of our council are in leadership positions on other boards and make sure that our interests as a city and within the region are being met. We do have Earth Day and Arbor Day activities planned, Councilmember Reynolds. I do need to sit down with staff again and just go through that itinerary. And so as soon as we have finalized that, we'll be sharing that information. We have also started putting together a report for you on our ATP improvements, as you requested, Councilmember Harlan. And I did want to mention, I also reviewed and received the communication from the Bikeway and Walkability Committee. We do need to give you some additional information as those numbers are not quite accurate. And so we want you to have the information from our budget, from our actuals, from our team that has put together. As you know, we have many restricted funds that we use and have used for Bikeway and Walkability improvements. And so we'll share that with the Bikeway and Walkability Committee in terms of the funding, all of the different sources of funding that we receive between the road maintenance and repair funds that we've used to do some of the projects, and traffic impact fees and gas tax and many others. So we'll make sure to get you that information and grants, right? As recently as the $2 million we received for the traffic signal synchronization. So we'll be giving you some additional information on that. And last but not least, we will be working on a T. Winkle proposal to give to our state partners, Senator Min in particular, for potential grant opportunities. Always so thankful to have our state legislators really looking out for Costa Mesa. We were very lucky in getting a $1 million grant from Assemblymember Cotty Petrie Norris for Lions Park, and so we're really hopeful that we can get additional state funding for our parks. And we will definitely follow up on the outdoor and temporary dining permits. We know that those expire, and we'll be working as staff to bring a proposal to you. And so I think that's all that you mentioned. And so lemon sustainability projects and a presentation. And so it's great that we have some feedback here, and all of these great projects will be all the more reason why you should support tonight's item under new business number 1.
Interesting. Good point. Okay. So thank you very much, Ms. Farrell Harrison. Now we go to the city attorney report. Ms. Barlow.
I can't even begin to follow that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I love it.
That's it? Wow, that's good.
That might have helped, though.
Well, you get points for brevity. Okay, so consent calendar. Now we're on to business. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine and will be acted upon in one motion. There's no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the public or a council member or a member of staff pulls the item. Is there anyone that has pulled an item, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you have pulled item number 8.
Well, wait a minute. I pulled item number 8, but only if there's a show and tell. Is there show and tell?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And does anybody else have anything to pull? Okay. So let's get a motion on the balance, please. Motion by, I don't see it. Could you
I'll
guys
move
do?
the balance, Reynolds.
Second.
Okay,
Okay,
motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mar, second by whom? By Reynolds? Okay,
Hold on.
excellent. So we have
Should be
motion.
working. Hold on just one second. Let's see. Let's hit this item.
Okay. Motion, we're going to do motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mar, second by Councilmember Reynolds. We got that.
Okay, and you should be able to vote now.
Call for the question.
Yes. There you go. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, good job. Now, I only pulled this item because it's about, we didn't want to read it, just for the record.
Yes, thank you. This is acceptance of completed citywide street slurry seal project, city project number 21-02.
The only reason I pulled the item, I'm sure it will get a 6-0 vote, is because as going through the calendar, consent calendar items, I remember that there was some discussion of this, and it was issue raised by members of the Bikeway and Walkability Committee and some council members about incorporating active transportation sharrows and things of that nature to this slurry project. So I thought I'd give our staff an opportunity to show a little bit more than what was in the staff report about what was done on this project. So you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and honorable members of the City Council, good evening. I'm Sung Yang, your city engineer, and it is my pleasure to give this presentation regarding the citywide street slurry seal project, number 21-02. Back in August of 3rd, 2021, the City Council awarded a construction contract to perform slurry seal improvements to several streets citywide. In doing so, over 10 centerline miles of streets have been slurry sealed. Centerline striping, lane markings, crosswalks, and reflective pavement markers have been placed and installed. Active transportation elements from the city's ATP plan include new bicycle lanes and Class 3 bikeways, also known as sharrows. The original contract amount was a little over $617,000, but came under budget at $600,500, despite additional ATP elements to the scope of the work. So a little about slurry sealing, and here's a typical before and after illustration of one of the streets that was slurry sealed, Clubhouse Road. Slurry sealing provides a protective coating that helps extend the life of the pavement. As you can see from the before and after photos, the quality of the pavement is improved through slurry sealing. Baker Street from Harbor Boulevard to Mesa Verde Drive, highlighted in these two next sets of slides. The new striping has been incorporated from Harbor Boulevard to Mesa Verde Drive, as stated before. This new striping and signage helps improve mobility, and the new thermoplastic markings and signage contribute to all modes of traffic, including bicyclists, pedestrians, and motorists. Here are more photos of Baker Street, and we want to highlight that Class 3 bikeway markings, or sharrows, have been installed and on the north side of Baker Street between Harbor Boulevard and Royal Palm Drive. Also along Baker Street are new Class 2 buffered bikeways that are consistent with the city's Active Transportation Plan, or ATP. Another example is Country Club Drive from Mesa Verde Drive to Giesler Avenue, in which the new striping enhances the roadway and is complemented with new Class 3 bikeways that enhance striping and visibility. Here is El Camino Drive from Monterey Avenue to Mendoza Drive with the same treatment. Again, the new striping enhances the roadway, and the new Class 3 bikeways enhance striping and visibility. In essence, this project is a positive endeavor which contributes to one of the City Council's goals and objectives of strengthening public safety and improving the quality of life. Thank you, and that concludes my short presentation on the slurry seal project. And also a big thanks to Almarias for great help on this project. Thank you.
Thanks. Alma, were you out slurry sealing those streets? Yeah, it's amazing. So talented, so talented. Do any of the council members, Councilmember Harlan first? Yes, you have the floor.
No, I don't.
Oh.
It's just on. I don't know.
What's that? What's that? Oh, so Councilmember Reynolds.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to touch on this in my just comments. I wanted to acknowledge staff for making the change in the successful project, and despite the change, still bringing it in under budget. So congrats on that. I think these projects help us sort of keep track of time. I remember that conversation, sort of the first of multiple conversations about really taking advantage of the sort of regular calendar cycle of slurry sealing to implement the active transportation plan. Really glad to see it done here successfully, and I know we've already folded in, I think, similar strategies to, is it Wilson Street and Placentia might have been our last conversation. So I wanted to say congrats to staff. Thank you for making the change on this project. Thank you for continuing to look for every opportunity to implement our active transportation plan. I think there's sort of two reasons in my mind that this strategy really makes sense. One, it's a really cost-efficient way to implement our active transportation plan. We're already slurry sealing, we're already repainting. Instead of painting again on a different project, we're able to do both at the same time. Also, slurry sealing is great for driving. It makes the drive smoother, but smoother drives are often faster drives, right? So every time we slurry seal, in a way, we're encouraging cars to drive faster, which can be a little bit more dangerous for pedestrians and bicyclists. So I think folding in all the ATP improvements that we can at the same time is also taking a bigger step towards safety. So again, thank you and congrats on coming in under budget.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Mar.
Yeah, I got a lot of, I can't talk. I got a lot of compliments on El Camino in the last couple of weeks, actually. So stopped in the park while I'm walking the dog and we like the green things. So everybody likes the green things. Thank you.
Yeah, same thing with me. I drive Baker almost every day between Harbor and Mesa Verde, and it's beautiful. It's just one of many beautiful improvements. And the other thing I really like about this, on budget, which happens all the time, and on budget and on time, but also having the kind of the humility to listen to the public and make certain adjustments that are requested by the residents, I think shows a lot. I think, it's just another example of the great work of your department. So thank you very much. I'm going to make the motion to approve. And it's seconded by Councilmember Chavez. Let's call for the question.
Sorry.
Oh, public comment?
Oh, sorry. We didn't do public comment. I'm sorry, I didn't do that. I forgot about that. Do we want to do public comment? Yeah, sorry. My mistake.
I canceled.
Thank you. See, humility to go back and listen to the public, and then I blow it by not calling for public comment. Mr. Taboda, you have the floor. We have to turn on your mic. Podium mic on. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. As a member of the Bike and Walk Committee, not speaking for the committee, but as a member, I want to thank staff and for the improvements on those three streets in particular, Baker, El Camino, and Country Club. I am familiar with all three of those streets, and I'm a huge fan of green paint. So along with Andrea Marr and company, green is good, although I'm wearing red. But thank you, staff, and a good start to more improvements coming for ATP. Thanks.
Thank you. Sir, you have the floor.
Good evening, Council. I wanted to take a moment to appreciate and also take a moment to kind of educate and kind of further the discussion around ATP. So first, I actually want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for pulling this item. I loved seeing the presentation, and I love your leadership on this, and it is appreciated and noted from the community. I also wanted to thank staff for implementing the ATP as we slurry seal. It's, as Councilmember Reynolds said, cost effective and a great way to think about this without having to apply for additional grants, especially since it came under budget. One of the things I wanted to take a moment to kind of educate council and educate the public on is in terms of bike infrastructure is the term sharo and what that really means from a bike user experience. And so sharrows are these painted on squares on the ground that have a little bicycle. They're typically green, and they indicate bike infrastructure. They're known as a Class 3 bike lane according to really national guidelines, not just state guidelines. Sharrows are really great in certain circumstances, but they're really troubling in other circumstances. And so I really want that just to be acknowledged and understood. And so there's this term that cities have come up with themselves, but it's not technically a formal term. Like an engineer couldn't actually understand this term and use it legally. But there's a Class 3 bike route and a Class 3 bike boulevard, and some cities have come up with themselves. And a Class 3 bike route is a bunch of sharrows on a street. It doesn't change the street whatsoever. It basically just says that a bunch of sharrows are there and that the cyclists can use the road. And in the cycling and the walking and safety advocacy side, we consider this pretty not good bike infrastructure because it's just paint on the ground. It's really not giving any sort of protection to the cyclist. In terms of a Class 3 bike boulevard, there are sharrows on the ground. But what there is in addition to sharrows is traffic calming measures, lane tightening, so that the vehicles that are going by and sharing the area with the cyclists are going slower and making the sharrow actually better bike infrastructure. And so I just want to appreciate this project. I want to appreciate sharrows as they are useful, and I also wanted to further the discussion of when they are best useful. And so for everyone can think about that so that we don't have cars going 40 miles an hour on the same road that we have sharrows, that doesn't make sense, and that's actually not good bike infrastructure. And so, like I said, this is an appreciation comment and an education comment, and so thank you all so much.
Thank you. Is there anybody on Zoom that wants to speak to this?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, now I will close public comment. Let's just go with the prior motion. Stevens and Chavez. Stevens made, Chavez seconded. Let's call for the question.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. So we don't have our public hearing item, as I said earlier. We don't have any old business. We have one new business item. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title?
Thank you. This is approval of mid-year staffing plan and salary schedule revisions to address recruitment and retention challenges. Presentation by Ms. Lee, Human Resources Manager.
Ms. Lee, you have the floor. Or do you want to start? Okay. So City Manager Farrell Harrison, you can kick off the presentation. Hold on. Do your mic.
Mayor, can you put it on discussion mode, maybe?
Sure. Does that help? They're usually not on the city manager and city attorney are off that program, so. Is there?
Do you want to hop over to Harper's seat?
Got it.
Oh, you're lit now. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
You got it.
Thank you for this item tonight. We wanted, as you know, at the last meeting that we had, which was just a week ago, we had the study session regarding an update of our financial condition and the mid-year budget review, if you will. As you know, this is an important time of the year, usually in this sort of January through March timeframe. Our finance department and all of our departments are undergoing the review of 3 fiscal years. We're looking at how we ended the last fiscal year because the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, is completed by December 31st. So we're looking at those actuals. What was the experience of the city with its financials? How did we do compared to the budget? At the same time, we're 6 months into the current fiscal year, reviewing that information. Carol's leading those conversations with the departments. Where are we now? And then, of course, we're also preparing for the following fiscal year, which begins July 1. So this time of the year is very important for us and for you. We're getting a real good sense of where the economy is, based on actual information, not just what was projected in the budget, where we stand today, if the trends continue, and then what's our outlook as we prepare the budget to bring it to you in April, so next month. When we had this conversation last week, we talked about the improved financial condition. As you know, we are, as staff, very conservative in our budgeting. I want to thank our Finance Director, Carol Molina, for being very conservative in the budgeting, because it allows us the opportunity to have flexibility in how we address unanticipated situations, but also to grow the organization and to incorporate new programs and services as you direct us to, and as policymakers you ask us to do, in a way that's measured and financially sustainable. When we presented to you last week, we shared that we believe that we have a deficit, and a surplus, and we'll go through those numbers shortly. And we also offered a discussion on some staffing changes based on a conversation we actually had in September of last year during our strategic planning retreat. And so you had some great questions about the staffing changes that we were recommending. And we've also had additional conversations where you've posed some specific questions about our vacancies. What's our historical spending as it relates to salaries? How do we compare to other cities? How do we do our market analyses? In other words, how do we make decisions about which positions we need to make changes for, and why are we asking for new positions when we have a number of vacancies? So the presentation tonight is going to address that in the context of your 3-year strategic planning goals, what the fiscal outlook is, some history on our staffing levels, recruitment and retention challenges that we're currently facing. We'll give you specific information on how our HR team conducts their market analysis. And then again, why we're making these proposed staffing adjustments, or why we're requesting them of you. We really need your feedback tonight. We're looking forward to the dialogue. You've asked some great questions over the past week, and so hopefully you'll get the answers. As you know, we're a team, and so we as staff need you to do a good job for you, but we also need you to feel comfortable. And so I'm hoping that this could be a good, engaging dialogue. Part 1 was last week, and this is, of course, the follow-up to that.
Thank you. Ms. Lee, you have the floor.
So as you know, as our 3-year strategic plan, we have the following council goals: to recruit and retain high-quality staff, achieve long-term fiscal sustainability, strengthen the public safety and improve the quality of life, diversify, stabilize, and increase housing to reflect community needs, maintain and enhance the city's facility, technology, and equipment, and advance environmental sustainability and climate resiliency. One of the specific items was to recruit and retain high-quality staff, including developing recommendations for City Council consideration, developing a framework for a market analysis of employee compensation for hard-to-fill positions and present the results to the City Manager, issue a request for proposal for a consultant who will identify opportunities to innovate and modernize recruitment, hiring, and retention through succession and talent management planning, developing a framework for robust training, mentorship, leadership development program, and present the results to the City Manager. The second set of objectives included initiate the process to map and evaluate the employee recruitment process to innovate and modernize recruitment and commence development of the succession plan and present to the City Manager. Present to the City Council for consideration the first phase of hard-to-fill positions requiring a market adjustment based on current data. Perform a market analysis of City Council compensation for comparable agencies and special districts within the county and report results to the City Manager. Launch the Costa Mesa University Wellness, Leadership, Training, Mentorship Program for all city employees, and develop HR staffing recommendations for inclusion in the mid-year budget to be presented to the City Council for consideration, and update and begin implementation of the online employee onboarding, training, and evaluation processes by updating the NeoGov system. As part of this recruit and retain high-quality staff, in September 27, 2021, City Council had requested staff expand capacity for enhanced recruitment and retention efforts. In December, 7th, staff presented Phase 1 to adjust compensation in certain classifications to the market. And on March 15th, staff requested City Council approval to bring additional positions to average compensation, convert certain part-time positions to full-time, and create 6 new positions. At this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Molina for a fiscal review.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Good evening, City Council members. It's my honor tonight to recap some of the fiscal analysis that was presented last week with a couple of additional points for you tonight. As you may recall, last week we discussed about the new guidelines that ARPA released earlier this calendar year. Essentially, there's governments across the country that are facing the same issues that we are as it relates to labor in the government sector. As such, they updated the use of ARPA funds to be able to provide premium pay for essential workers, restore positions, restore employment, funding for employment that employees experience pay reductions or furloughs, maintain compensation levels to prevent layoffs, and provide worker incentives, including increases in compensation. Some of the eligible activities under ARPA allows us to realign positions, leverage existing positions, revamp our recruitment process, and provide reasonable compensation at market levels. As you may recall, the city received about $26.2 million in an award last year through ARPA. Half of it was received last year in April, the other half we're anticipating in the next 30 to 45 days. The $13.1 million that was received last year was funded multiple areas of the emergency. This last year, we still have that $13.2 million, that second half available. As such, city staff is recommending use of some of these ARPA funds for these eligible activities. As a recap of last week's mid-year presentation, we discussed the total general fund revenues increases, particularly in the area of the sales tax. Alongside with some of the economic indicators across the country, our sales tax has increased significantly to be able to afford us an increase of about $6 million. Their other revenue streams also increased for about $8.4 million that we're anticipating by the end of this fiscal year, which resulting in not needing any use of reserves and reducing our request of ARPA funds. We're also experiencing a reduction of expenditures to the end of the fiscal year of about $1.2 million for a total estimated amount of $2.8 million by June 30th. Also wanted to recap for you tonight where we stood in the general fund balance. Our 18-19 audited numbers, which was before the pandemic, the first full year before the pandemic, we were at $51.5 million. In 19-20, that last quarter was impacted significantly fiscally. However, we still did not use the reserves, ending the fund balance at $53.5 million. Our last year, and we ended the pandemic, first full year of the pandemic, essentially slightly above 28,000 to the positive to $53.5 million. And we're anticipating maintaining that fund balance by the end of this fiscal year. To recap, last week we presented a mid-year presentation for your review. At that presentation, we provided multiple economic indicators that is suggesting that the economy is starting to come back. We also discussed a couple of areas where we highlighted the inflation rates. We talked about the war in Ukraine. However, our revenues are still growing, which we still believe strongly that we will have a surplus of about $2.8 million by the end of the fiscal year. As such, we are requesting the use of ARPA funds to recruit and retain the high-quality staff that's before you tonight. I would like to recap some of the staffing levels over the last 10 years. In 2009, 2010, before the Great Recession impacted us, we were at 611 full-time positions. Bring it forth to the current year's adopted budget, we're still 81 positions less than we were before the Great Recession, or 13%. Last week, a member of the public presented a couple of slides we wanted to bring forth with you tonight. One of these were the historical staff salaries. Staff salaries, percentage of the general fund, was about 46.3% back in 2009-10 before the recession hit. Bringing it to 1920, it's only 33%. One of the key areas we wanted to emphasize here is even though as the percentage of the general fund salaries reduced significantly, the actual salaries, the dollars, did not change. In fact, it went down from over 10 years ago. However, our general fund did increase by about 40%. We also wanted to bring back the annual pension expense. We recognize that our pensions continue to increase year over year. Back in 11-12, they were about 13.8 million. In actuals, in the current year's budget, it's 31.6 million. However, we wanted to put it into context for you as total compensation as a percentage of the general fund, which would include the pensions. Back in 9-10, it was 80% of the general fund. Currently, we're at 69.2% for 19-20. As you can see, even when we take into account the pensions, we significantly are lower in a percentage ways of our general fund totals. 10% if you're comparing it to 19-20, but if you compare it to 18-19, which was the last year before the pandemic, it's closer to 18%. Just to recap, the city is experiencing strong financials currently, and we continue to exercise fiscal prudence. As a reminder, in 1920, when the pandemic hit, the city immediately implemented multiple efforts to ensure that the city's finances were not impacted. As you can tell from the general fund balance, the reserves were not touched in any of the years of which the pandemic had impacted. Our staffing levels continue to be lower than even pre-recession levels. Our total cost of salaries and benefits, which do include pensions, as a percent of general fund, has decreased. And the total cost of salaries in real dollars is now lower than it was 12 years ago. At this time, I will turn it back to Ms. Lee to discuss the recruitment and retention challenges facing the city.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. Well, we put together some information in an effort to answer some of the questions regarding recruitments, vacancies, staffing, and compensation. Here we put together a chart of our full-time hires and separations over the last 5 fiscal years and also including the current year. As you will see, in total, over the last 5 years, plus the first 2 months of 2022, we've hired 306 full-time employees. In 2021, we had a record-setting 89 full-time employees, which is an increase of about 52 employees over the prior year. I'm very proud of our HR team and working in conjunction with our city departments as we were able to accomplish this in a full year of the pandemic in the midst of HR staff conducting contact tracing, coordinating COVID quarantining and testing, reviewing ever-changing health orders, and coordinating sick leave, and much more. In the first 2 months of this year, we've already had 14 new full-time hires. However, on the other side, we've also had 218 separations over the same time period, and with 8 separations already in the first 2 months of this year. Here we show our separations in a little bit more detail by year. You'll see we have about 30 to 50 per year. You'll see we increased our retirement starting in 2020. Historically, we've had a bit of a retention problem in the resignation area. One key thing to note is 56% of the resignations are for employees who had less than 3 years of service. we've essentially become a training ground for other agencies, as most of these resignations are due to employees accepting positions with other public agencies and some employees moving on to the private sector. We also wanted to give an update regarding staffing relating to the new retail cannabis and delivery program. We are pleased to report that all the approved positions related to this program have been filled. These are part of the 89 hires in 2021, when we have filled all the positions that you see here. We wanted to take a moment to thank the City Council. Typically, new programs that are approved do not include additional staffing to support them. So again, we thank you for your consideration in approving additional staffing to support these programs. As a reminder, the City Council did approve new Measure Q fees and updated Measure X that would offset the cost of these positions. Moving on to the hard-to-fill recruitments. As previously mentioned, one of the City Council goals is to recruit and retain high-quality staff. Specifically in this objective, developing a framework for market analysis of employee compensation for hard-to-fill positions. Market surveys provide an opportunity to bring compensation levels to market levels to help ensure that the city remains competitive in its ability to recruit and retain high-quality staff. Phase 1 was approved by the City Council in December 2021. The proposed adjustments for Phase 2 brought to you tonight are based on alignment with the market, internal alignment and compassion within the series. Additional classifications within the series of the identified classifications are also recommended for adjustment to ensure the integrity of the classification. In reviewing a market analysis, elements for total compensation that we look at include base salary, medical, dental, cafeteria plan contributions, employee retirement contributions, and the CalPERS benefit formula. The cities we use for comparison are our contiguous cities, which include the cities of Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Irvine, Santa Ana, and Fountain Valley. I won't be reviewing every position that we're requesting tonight, but I wanted to give a sampling and also some recruitment data for some of the positions. Specifically in development services, positions recommended for adjustment in Phase 2 include our entire planning series. In doing the market analysis for the planning series, we found that the classifications are approximately 16 to 20% below market. This is an example of the market analysis that was conducted for principal planner. This is actual data, and you will see that we are, based on a total compensation, we are 20% below market. You will also see that in rank for both base salary and total compensation, we are 6 out of 6. One thing to note here specifically, you will note that we have the classic CalPERS tier listed. We are at the 2 at 60 formula. It's important to bring this to your attention because while we list it here, we don't actually assign a value to it. But this is, it has been an obstacle in recruiting and attracting lateral candidates from other agencies because many do not want to leave for a lower benefit formula. So it's important to note that. It's also another visual representation of the information that you saw on the previous slide. For principal planner, the total market average you see is our goal. It's just the average. And again, we're 20% below, last out of all 6 agencies for our principal planner position.
Kasama, can we take a quick pause here?
Sure.
As I just wanted to share, our development services department is one of the ones that's handling some of our most important work in the city. I can't think of another department that is doing as much as this department is doing. They're updating the housing element. They will come back eventually with a short-term vacation rental program. They're implementing a brand new cannabis program, never done before. They also assisted with the ballot measure. They will eventually come to you with a housing inclusionary ordinance. They brought one Metro West. The list is so long of what this team is doing, and we have vacancies in this department that are systemic, that are persistent, that we can't address, and we can't get quality talent here if we are this far below and we're 6 out of 6. It's not tenable.
assistant planner is also one of the recruitments that have been difficult to recruit or retain. As you will see here, we've had recruitments in 2016, 2018, 2019, and 2021. Cumulatively, we have had, from 2006 to the present, we have had 672 applications, 5 rounds of interviews for a total of 49 candidates being interviewed, 37 candidates placing on the eligibility list, and 10 candidates being hired. However, it's important to note that out of the 10 candidates hired, only 5 remain from 2006. This is a 50% turnover rate. And in fact, of the 5 that are currently here, 3 were just hired at the end of 2021. We also, in our last round of recruitments, we also offered employment to 4 candidates who declined the city's offer. We do currently have 1 vacancy still, and we are currently recruiting for that position, and we've received 89 applications that are in progress currently. Moving on to the finance department, we have our accounting positions that I've also studied. Accounting classifications listed here were approximately 16% below market. For the budget analyst recruitment, this is a sample of another very difficult to fill position. We've had a continuous recruitment that was open from August 2018 to February 2021. In this recruitment, 337 applications were received. 9 rounds of interviews were held with a total of 33 candidates. 24 candidates placed on the eligibility list. 2 candidates were offered employment and withdrew or declined the city's offer, and 4 candidates were hired. But here, 0 of these 4 candidates are currently employed. We have no staff in our budget section in the analyst role. Information technology, we studied the entire programming series. The classifications listed here are up to 9% below market. Programmer analyst series, we've had a couple recruitments in the series at the senior level and at the programmer analyst 2 level. So we had one in 2015 for senior programmer analyst, 2016 programmer analyst, 2017 programmer analyst 2, and currently we have a continuous recruitment that has been open since 2019. These classifications are one of the most challenging classifications for us to fill. In total, from 2015 to present day, we've had 513 applications, 13 rounds of interviews for a total of 55 candidates, 44 placed on the eligibility list. We hired 1 senior programmer analyst and 2 programmer analysts 2. Thankfully, all 3 of them are still employed today. We also offered employment to 6 other candidates who declined the offer or were disqualified due to extensive background checks required for these positions. After our 2015 senior programmer analyst recruitment failed to fill all of our vacancies at the time, we decided to recruit for the lower level programmer analyst 2 in hopes that we could find good quality candidates that we could coach, mentor, and train. However, we found it difficult to recruit even at the programmer analyst 2 level. We eventually changed our strategy to leave the recruitment open continuously. We do have 2 vacancies still that have not been able to be filled, and there will be additional vacancies in the future as approved by the ITSP. We currently review applications on a weekly basis and conduct interviews as we get a group of candidates eligible to interview.
I'm going to jump in here again, just for additional context. And so our information technology department is tasked with implementing a 5-year plan where we'll be implementing a brand new land management system that's state-of-the-art, a new CAD RMS system for both police and fire, a new financial software system to replace the 26-year-old system that we have now, and many, many other technology enhancements, including the mobile devices that our public safety teams need to do their jobs. And yet, after 9 rounds of interviews and interviewing 30 candidates, these are still difficult positions to fill.
Despite the difficulties in recruitments, I do have one success story that I do want to mention. Network administrator. In 2020, at the end of 2020, we actually updated the compensation for this position. This was requested by the Employee Association for us to look at it. Right after it was updated, we went out for a recruitment in 2021. We've received 147 applications. We've done 2 rounds of interview with 15 candidates, with 10 placing on the list. 3 candidates were offered employment and either withdrew or were disqualified through the background process. However, we have hired 2 candidates recently. They are still employed. And the good news is here, we were able to attract 2 candidates from 2 public agencies, which is very successful. In addition, in hearing from the recruiter and the department, the caliber of candidates received in this recruitment compared to our past IT recruitment experience has significantly improved. We are finding that we are getting more candidates from other public agencies, which we were not able to attract before.
And this was one of the first ones. This was the first one that we brought to you for approval. And so thank you for that. We can see the difference in the pool, the talent, and the process.
Yeah, and we still, while we filled our current vacancies, those anticipated vacancies through the ITSP, and we have an additional 133 applications that have been received since that we are holding to be reviewed for future vacancies. In summary, regarding the hard-to-fill compensation adjustments, there will be savings from fewer position recruitments, less employee turnover, fewer temporary staffing contracts, and less reliance on consultant services. There will be increased productivity and operational efficiencies across the organization. The estimated fiscal impact of the market compensation adjustments is $175,000 for the current fiscal year and $711,000 annually for this phase 2. There are sufficient vacant positions citywide that departments can absorb their proposed compensation adjustments within the fiscal year 2021 and 2022 adopted budget. Finance is confident that there is sufficient revenue to fund these adjustments on an ongoing basis. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our city manager, Ms. Farrell Harrison, to discuss the staffing plan recommendations.
So, Council, we're wrapping up here as we get into just the second piece, as this agenda item has a couple of pieces for your consideration. One is this piece, which is addressing the market compensation discrepancy that we have, which is pretty significant when we're comparing to our competition, if you will. But then there's also the need for additional staffing. And so you heard from our chiefs last week about their needs in their areas, and then a couple of other departments as well, and there are some part-time conversions. I know that this is happening in a little bit of an off time. Typically, we have some of these conversations, especially as it relates to new positions during the budget process. We wanted to get this information to you as soon as possible so that we could have a little bit of a head start in filling the positions, knowing how long it takes in the public sector to do the background checks and all of that. So I'm just going to do a quick recap here. Again, we're looking for just to make some progress in some of these areas. And so in the police department, it's a very modest request here of a net increase to our table of organization of just 1.5. You'll see that there's a request for a new police sergeant. We spoke about that one at length at the last meeting. The next 2 are really taking existing classifications and just upgrading them. It's not adding additional staff. This is just upgrading existing classifications for the level of work that's required, and then the conversion of some part-time positions to full-time. For example, the part-time crime scene specialist to full-time, so that our officers can be back patrolling and doing their activities as quickly as possible. And so you'll see it's just an increase of 1.5 here for these recommendations, and a modest amount of funding in order to get some additional sworn staff and get the right people in the right places. In fire and rescue, 2 additional staff. The 911 telecom manager, we explained last week that it's for a more sort of robust oversight that involves both police and fire in our dispatch. Of course, we are unique in that we have a PSAP and an operation that's both police and fire. Even some other full-service cities, just for context, just having worked in a couple of other cities that have full-service police and fire, there are other cities where fire is outsourced or it's in another agency oversees it. For example, Huntington, their fire dispatch is handled by the MetroNet Authority, It's a consortium of multiple cities that's operated out of the Anaheim Dispatch Center. We have our own dispatch center, so we're lucky to have that, and we would like a telecom manager that would oversee that in order for sworn personnel that's currently overseeing that function to get back to the law enforcement activities, and then a fire captain to further enhance and improve our emergency medical services program operations. And then here, while it seems like a lot of words, it's basically converting, I'm going to go to the second half, converting 9 part-time positions into 5 full-time. So it's a net 0 in terms of there's no increase, the table of organization from the part-time to full-time adjustments. There are some modest increases there in cost, but less turnover, greater impact in having a full-time person. In these categories, we're training people over and over and over again, and they leave because they're part-time positions and they want full-time work. And then above the line, it's reinforcing our HR operation to address many of these issues and having 2 additional positions there. This recommendation in particular regarding HR, that was a very robust discussion that we had at the strategic planning retreat in September. And then adding a senior accountant in the finance department to assist with those functions for a net table of organization increase of 3. And so that sums up the presentation this evening. Hopefully this provides more context and answers the questions that you posed. It's not easy to bring an item like this forward, but it's a matter of, I think, what kind of city do we want to be when it comes to our workforce. And if some cities will make the decision that it's okay to be the training ground and compensations at a level where folks come in and they stay for 3 years and they move on. I don't think that's the intent of the council. It's also not great succession planning, and it also leads to constantly having relatively more inexperienced people in roles that are very important. We're a cutting-edge city. We're doing incredible work. In many cases, we're considered leaders in the region. And so if we want to maintain that reputation and build on that, we need to at least be compensating at market at a minimum, which is just average 50% of our surrounding neighbors, and also addressing some of the structural changes that we need to make with the part-time conversions to full-time in order to really achieve the goals that you laid out for us, including all of the ones that you added today.
Thanks.
Which are great, and we would
for
love to work
reminding
on.
us.
It's all very exciting work.
Okay, so now it's time for questions. Thank you very much. Great job, everybody. Thank you. Wonderful. So now it's time for questions from council. So, council, do you have any questions of staff on this item? Not working?
Yes.
Yeah, let's just do, oh, I'm sorry, we're back to, it's discussion mode. I remember I pushed that. So you could just go, Council, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Mar.
Thank you. I feel kind of stupid asking this question, but I'm 497, 220 for all other departments, plus 274 for fire and 331 for police. It's 1.1 million. But I keep seeing the total cost of this thing is 711. What am I missing?
2 different, 711 is the cost of the hard-to-fill positions.
Okay.
It's the market adjustment piece.
So it's 711 plus the 1.1 million.
Correct.
Okay. I just didn't see that actually spelled out anywhere in the staff report, what the total dollar amount is. And then, Ms. Molina, I thought you said that we were using ARPA funds, but I thought we were trying not to use ARPA funds.
So in the adopted budget, we had adopted $6 million worth of ARPA funds for the current year and about $3 million of reserves. Due to the increase in revenues and the reduction of expenditures, we're able to eliminate the use of reserves and half that ARPA down to $3 million. of the $13 million that we'll be receiving in the next 30 to 45 days. So those funds are still available.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not trying to be obtuse here. I just feel like the staff report specifically calls out this is going to be available because of unfunded other positions, and that there's ARPA monies available. While the city will not need to utilize these funds for this purpose, the ARPA funds will provide an additional safety net if needed. So we are using ARPA funds, and it is 1.1 million plus the 711.
So the ARPA funds would be eligible if we so chose to go that route. However, we are seeing an increase on revenues on our side, which also the increase in revenues don't still take into account the cannabis. So we're very comfortable knowing that our revenues are going to continue to increase, but the eligibility of ARPA funds that the United States Department of Treasury has expanded on allows us to use ARPA funds for these adjustments.
Okay.
If we so chose.
But we haven't even had Cannabis go to Planning Commission, so the idea that we're going to have revenue in this fiscal year is highly unlikely, it feels.
We're not anticipating revenue in this fiscal year.
Okay.
No.
So just to be clear, we have a $2.8 million anticipated surplus in the current year without anything related to cannabis that hasn't happened as of today. We're assuming there's no additional cannabis revenue happening this year.
Right, but that 2.8 million is only because we added 6 of ARPA money in the general fund? No.
No,
Okay.
that's general fund revenue. That's only general fund revenue.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, there's ARPA funding as well that's available that we could use or we could not use for this purpose. But as for this current fiscal year, we are anticipating that $2.8 million surplus, mostly from revenue and also reduced expenses. We may need to use some of the ARPA funding to close this fiscal year. We're estimating a little less than we had anticipated, but likely may not even need to do that. We'll not need reserves at all. And then still we have ARPA funds available, the other 13 million.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think, this is not for show. I literally just was doing math during the presentation and realized I wasn't sure where all the money was coming from. I mean, I think I mentioned this last time, having the context of this relative to the rest of the budget, I think would still be really helpful. And then having this in the context of the next 5 years when we don't have ARPA money, right? So if we still anticipate transferring in 6 million, even if we're not dipping into our reserves, understanding there's only 13 left, just makes me a little nervous. Go ahead. Looks like you want to talk.
Just wanted to make clear. So we reduced the use of ARPA to 3 million. We're anticipating a surplus of 2.8. Essentially, we could choose to leave ARPA fully intact at 13 million, still leave the reserves untouched, and still have the 13.1 million untouched for eligibility for other areas as well. This just provides us an additional area of use for ARPA, an additional bucket of money, so to speak. So essentially, at this point, we could most likely close out the fiscal year without using reserves and ARPA money.
Okay, that's helpful, especially since we don't plan on even if we authorize this tonight, by the time we actually got positions in, we'd be pretty darn close to the end of this fiscal year, which is kind of why you're able to do that math. Is that right?
Correct.
Because you're not spending the full 1.1 plus 711.
Correct.
Okay. And I know the aversion to, sort of putting a forecast out there is that we try to be really, really conservative with what our potential revenues would be and really, really conservative with what our costs could be. And that often puts us in a deficit because we try to kind of play it so close to being balanced if we're conservative on both sides. I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking for context that we can make decisions in really from now until as we're going through the budget process, because that's next. This is mid-year technically, right? But we're going to jump right into planning for 22-23. And so that would help my brain think through these things. On the slide that you showed with pensions, with benefits and salaries as 66% or so. Is that all in? Is that medical, essentially fringe, everything that you would layer on top of an employee for all the indirect costs they incur?
That's correct. It would be the full compensation, the fully burdened amount that the city would undertake.
Okay, thank you. And then you were showing Ms. Lee the backfilling that has happened and the relative to the resignations. I think that's a pretty powerful chart. Like I said, I'm really excited about the progress that PD has made. But I'm also wondering, it's been the Great Recession, right? Or not, excuse me, it's been the Great Resignation. Like everyone's quit their job. Right? Everyone's managed to find something else or move on. How does that less than 3-year employees deciding to resign, where does that fall relative to other cities? I'm sure everyone's got some level of churn. Again, can we think about that in context, or do we think it's us?
Let's put the slide that shows our separation. So we were suffering from the great, what was it called?
Resignation.
The Great Resignation before the Great Resignation. Can we show that your analysis from 2017 till now? So that middle column on this slide shows that we've had significant resignations. Now it's escalated, and it's worse because the retirements, we have a 64% increase in the rate of retirement.
Yep, got it. And are these all full-time hires? Or does this blend in part-time?
This is full-time only.
Got it, okay. Yeah, that's why I was asking about part-timers last week too, because I feel like it's probably amplified for every full-timer that comes and goes. We probably have 3 or 4 part-timers, right? That are more, even less likely to stay for extended periods of time.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, for our part-timers, we kind of have our seasonal parks and community services employees, and that typically has high turnover, no matter what agency you're at, because it's seasonal and the kids are in school and then they go back to school. Where we have also difficulties is we have like professional level part-timers, like for example, we used to have part-time assistant planners. They've also used us for a training ground because we have the ability to provide this experience at a part-time level in an assistant planner or, an engineering technician. If they don't have a full-time position for us to move into, what happens is they use the experience they gain here, and it's great experience, and they go get a full-time job elsewhere. And we've lost several very decent part-time employees from the city, so we do have a great training program here. In terms of, the resignations, and is it like this with other agencies? Definitely things have changed during COVID a little bit, but when we're getting the resignations and we're finding out why they are leaving for other cities with higher compensation packages.
Okay. I would like to, when we get to the fiscal year 22-23 budget, like to understand the part-time hires a little bit more and how many we have and how many of those remain unfilled. Looking at the vacancy report for the last couple of months, I think we only list full-time hires on there that I could see. So I don't have any real sense of how many part-timers we're still missing. And I know both in PD and in recreation, they're a pretty significant part of our workforce. So I'd like to have a little more visibility on that, please. And then, one of my questions that I think prompted some of this to the city manager earlier this week was that if you look at code enforcement, assistant planners, and then sworn officers, we've been running a deficit on those folks for a while. They've been on the vacancy list for a while. And so when we say that we were able to hire the cannabis folks, I think all 3 of those positions actually were kind of already vacancies on the city. How are we tagging them as hires relative to cannabis versus just filling positions that were already vacant? What's the distinction there?
We do track our vacancies by like position control number, and they're attached to certain programs. So when the original vacancy for assistant planner was listed, it was after the approval of the assistant planner position for the cannabis. So, and we actually had a couple positions vacant. We hired 4 at one time. The current vacancy that you see now is because one of the new hires that we had just resigned. So that's so at the time it was filled and we just lost the position.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's helpful. I'm almost done. In the recruit and retain high-quality staff, there's issue an RFP for a consultant who will identify opportunities to innovate and modernize recruitment, hiring and retention, blah, blah, blah. So have we done that?
Yes.
Do we have that consultant on board?
We
or-
do. It's
okay.
CPS HR Consulting, and they have we've had initial meetings with all of our management team and in our recruitment team.
Good.
And so we'll be kind of going into the next phases is they're going to take all the feedback and develop recommendations moving forward.
Very good. Okay, good. I'm glad we're utilizing that. Do we still say or publish anywhere this 5% below market policy?
No.
We banned that, right?
Yeah.
Like we threw that out. Okay. Thank you.
It's not a policy. We're just kind of living with the legacy of that. And 4 years, 5 years down the line, now we're at a place where we're 20% off in some classifications.
Yeah. Okay. But I hope we never speak of that again. Okay. And then the last thing I'll say is this feels really systemic. I mean, this is the horror stories that you just told about positions that we've done 13 rounds of interviews for. Like that is, I think there's an opportunity cost here and the time that freaking takes the rest of the department. And there's an opportunity cost to hiring people to then turn around and leave very quickly because we spend time training them and they spend time getting to know our city. And I know you can't possibly put a number on that, but I think that's, you know, as much as I'm sort of beating everyone up about the budget right now, I also think that we have to work smarter, not harder, because that is awful. I'm glad you told those stories. I think that was helpful. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Really good comments. We're on discussion mode, so if any council member wants to ask questions, you could just say my name or whatever, and I'll give you the floor.
John?
You may have the floor. Councilmember Harlan.
Thank you. I kind of don't know where to start here. I share a lot of the concerns that Mayor Pro Tem Mar raised, and maybe the easiest way for me to start is I quite honestly think that this should have been the study session we had last week, the context about our recruiting and retention, rather than the specific job descriptions. I'll get to that later, but I do have some specific questions. But before I get to that, I mean, it seems like our council goal of recruit and retain high quality staff, we have challenges in the verbs as well as the adjective, right? Everything about this goal seems to be problematic, or at least highlighted tonight. And Ms. Lee, thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, I think this is really what I've been waiting for, because it seems like it is in fact systemic. And it seems like our problems, I can name at least three. You know, we're a training program. That's a problem. Ongoing retirements, every agency seems to face that, but maybe ours is more significant. And then third, we have a below market compensation package. And so I'm wondering, what are the remedies, and do those actually address all of those problems systemically or individually? So for example, if we do raise compensation, is that going to basically make Costa Mesa more of a place where people want to stay longer? I don't know the answer to that. Is that going to hold off on retirements, maybe? I'm not quite sure. So one of the things that you brought up in your presentation that caught my eye was the comparison cities. And I think it was basically our local, Newport, Huntington, Santa Ana, Irvine. Do we lose staff to those cities?
Absolutely. Especially because they're local, it's easy to make that transition because it's not physically far away from Costa Mesa. So if you can drive to Costa Mesa, you can drive to Newport Beach.
Sure.
Obviously, we lose a ton of candidates to Santa Ana, Huntington in the past, Newport Beach, and they're higher paying, right? So
right.
And Irvine is another coveted city out there.
And I know you specifically mentioned we didn't assign a value to the retirement package, but kind of on a rough scale of 1 to 10, where does that leave us as far as being at a disadvantage?
Well, let me show you I'll point out an interesting. So if you look here, there's 3 agencies in the group that are 2 at 60. Santa Ana, Irvine, and Huntington Beach have better retirement formulas. But also look at our contribution rates that we pay. So even though we have the lower retirement contribution, we are one of the highest contributors. Our employees pay 12% when they can go to Irvine at 2 at 50, and right there is a 5% difference in contribution. So not only are we at a lower retirement formula on its own, we also have the second highest contribution rate.
For the employee, so just
For
to
the
be
employee,
clear,
yes.
not the employer, what the employee pays towards their own retirement. So in addition to having the 6th ranking salary, 12% of that salary, the employee gives back to PERS. And we have a lower retirement formula. It's a trifecta of not good. It's lower salary, lower CalPERS benefit, higher payment from the employee into the PERS system.
So, and I can appreciate that. I think from a policymaker standpoint, the piece of information, the data point that I would be looking for here too would be the overall citywide pension obligation. I mean, are these cities in worse shape than we are? I mean, they're going to have more to kind of contribute to at some point, because I think us on the dais are trying to look at what those long-term impacts may be. That's not a critical item, but I think it gives more context for some of these numbers.
Well, I managed Huntington Beach's finances for a number of years, and they have their unfunded liability dwarfs. I mean, it's ours. I mean, it's huge. I mean, they're probably at 2-3 times our unfunded liability, especially since a lot of these cities have significant unfunded liabilities because they also have, they're full service cities, they have more employees, and they have many different, they have different benefit formulas. And so all of the cities that are here have an unfunded liability. Most cities of the 400 in the state have that, and there's a 30-year plan to pay that off. I think in those areas, I don't remember anybody being worse off. It's a challenge for all of these cities, to be honest. When someone is looking to come to the city, so from a policymaker standpoint, that's definitely important for us as staff and the finance team. It's really important. When we're looking at it from the lens of an employee or a candidate, they're looking at the columns that show their salary and that tier, what kind of benefit will they get? And then, because many of them, if they're coming into a junior classification, they're young, and they're seeing, I have to pay 12% into a retirement. That seems very, very far out. And so it makes it tough to bring that fresh new talent at those junior levels into the organization with that kind of a contribution from the employee, in addition to what finance is paying for the unfunded liability and all the other ongoing costs that we have to pay as a city. I hope that just helps put it in context too.
It does. I'll hold off on any other comments or questions at the moment. I'm curious what my other colleagues have to say on this.
Okay. If you want to take a second bite at the apple with questions, you're welcome to. Do any other council members wish to ask questions? Councilmember Reynolds.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add, I think, one question and note that the other questions already asked were on my list as well. So I agree with those questions and the concerns raised. The easy one, can you send us this presentation? I think there's a lot of really good detail in here that wasn't in our staff report, and it's helpful for us to have. I'm curious, and I really do appreciate the context, the numbers sort of painting the picture is really helpful. Raising salaries, changing benefits packages, that's an important strategy in being competitive. I'm curious, what other strategies we're thinking about that also could cost money in terms of being competitive? I look at Irvine, Irvine's a very different city, a much younger city. Their money comes in differently. It's going to be really hard to compete with Irvine on a dollar for dollar basis, right? So I know some of the other strategies we've sort of brainstormed in different conversations are, loan programs, ways we can help people, buy homes in Orange County, right? That could be something we could do that would be attractive. Can you just talk about some of the other things you're thinking about in terms of attracting people to Costa Mesa?
Sure, that's a great question. We've been thinking about that quite a bit. And actually, you as council came up with some great ideas. I know in the context of my performance evaluation as your city manager, as I was sharing some of these challenges that I've experienced before, but not to this extent. We were brainstorming, and you actually came up, the ad hoc came up with great ideas about things like a first-time homebuyers program, or other ways that we could differentiate ourselves as a city to attract new employees. It could be, something as simple as, really touting our wellness programs. Like now we're really focusing on wellness. We have our Wellness Wednesdays. It's once a month. We'd like to make them weekly. The Costa Mesa University platform that we're working on, I do think is going to be super exciting once we launch that. It'll be like an orientation program that every new employee would go through once a month, learning about something new in the city. And it also helps to build that cohesiveness that you're a team. So we don't have people just working in their departments, they're meeting their peers in other departments. I think that would be really useful. We have other tools in the toolbox that can be used to supplement this, but when you have a salary that's 20% low, it's hard to make that up with kind of one-time incentives or even a strong training program. And so I think we're looking at different things, and we're certainly open to suggestions if you have some. I really like that first-time home buyers idea, but it's tough when folks typically are just if they apply to our city, they're probably applying to a couple of others. And as you can see, we actually get to the point where people will accept and then withdraw, or we make the offer and they withdraw. And so that's what tells me that there's, in the end, they liked us so much that they almost accepted the position. And so we're almost there. I think we just need that incremental lift just to get us over that hump and close the deal with some of these really good candidates. And then, of course, to keep them. I don't know, do you have more ideas, or Susan or anybody, on other some of the things that we've been talking about in terms of?
I'll just add a couple of points that, we've been talking about just the climate and the culture of the organization, and that, I participate in a lot of the recruitment and a lot of the interviews and the panels. And, I think our city manager is correct. A lot of people really want to be a part of what we're doing here in Costa Mesa. Some of the things that I've heard from people that have not accepted the position, primarily it's been the 2.0 at 60, and they're coming from another city. They don't want to lose what they've got, and the salary's not making up that difference. We spend a lot of time in the pre-hiring process going through quantifying it so that they can really make an informed decision about those components. So I think they are important. But some of the other things that we're looking at is just our environment and our space. How can we improve our employee spaces and our lunchrooms and just make the environment a place where people, feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And, those of us that work here are very passionate about what we're doing and what we're involved in. And I see the excitement in the community. I see it regionally. I think with some of these improvements that we'll have a better success rate in our hiring.
I think Susan's comments just triggered me. I think non-PERSable compensation increases are also helpful. And so increasing medical and dental to differentiate ourselves as people get in the phase of their career where they're starting to build a family, if that's the case, you do start looking at that, even in some cases sooner than you even really start thinking about retirement. And it doesn't increase our pension costs, so that's good. So there, I think, in some other categories of compensation that could be helpful. I think we had even talked at one point about like a wellness benefit where you get, gym memberships, right? Come to the city of Costa Mesa, get healthy. You get for $50 a month, right? I mean, that's something that, again, these things that could differentiate us, but it's the compensation now in some of these classifications is just so far from median that it's tough to fill that.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. And Councilmember Harlan may have touched on this. I think this might relate to one of his comments. I think maybe seeing some of those different strategies and I think we're hearing sort of anecdotes, right, of what we're hearing from people who leave or who choose not to come. If there's sort of a more systemic way we can get some information from, the staff we want to retain, to the people we want to recruit, we want to hire, to the people who maybe not be applying at all for some reasons, right? If we can kind of prioritize what are the most impactful strategies compared to costs, I think that would be really helpful. And I suspect that may change over time as we come out of this Great Recession. But all of the things that you think are impactful, that are low cost and we can do right away, I think it makes sense to amplify those things. I don't know if that means fewer or more council member questions during council meetings. What's helpful? I think that covered. I'll just follow up on the first question that Mayor Pro Tem Mar asked too. I had this one related to the ARPA funds. One of my comments at our last meeting was sort of just wanting to be, definitely sure that there was opportunity with those ARPA funds for sort of one-time important, or what I would think would be valuable purchases, land acquisition to increase our park space. My understanding, again, is that a lot of these ARPA funds that are still coming in are sort of not allocated necessarily. They're a safety net, but still available for some other goals, correct?
Hi, Councilmember Reynolds. Yes, that is correct. That second half of ARPA has not been 100% allocated outside of the $3 million that we expected to use this year, but there's a good likelihood that we won't be using it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Reynolds. Councilmember Chavez, you can ask your questions, and Councilmember Gameros, you can go and ask your questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and forgive me for checking the budget of Fountain Valley right now. I will begin my comments by just asking a simple question, and we may not have the answer to this question. Do we know how much turnover there is in other cities? Like in these 6 cities, do we know if anyone else has a high turnover rate like us?
We don't have that information.
Okay.
But just having worked at one of the other cities here for 10 years, 9 years, Carroll too, I have personally not experienced two things. One, this level of turnover. Two, this many times having to recruit for positions ever. I've never seen, and I was a finance director for 13 years. I was a finance director in Lomita, in Long Beach, and in Huntington Beach. I never, ever had to have repetitive recruitments, like one after another. I've never had to have more than one recruitment to fill a budget analyst position, ever. That's never, ever happened. And so to your point about this is a systemic problem, it is absolutely a systemic problem, which is why I think the numbers are quite where they are.
Okay.
And so that I don't know, we don't have those figures, but I can tell you that information technology to have 30 interviews and still have vacancies. That just doesn't happen. We're competing, all of us, for good people, but to have these outcomes, that's not common at all. It's very unusual.
Okay. And then, Ms. Molina, I know it's colloquial because you don't have the exact numbers, but in your prior experience, have you seen this much level of turnover in cities you worked with before?
I will echo the city manager's same comments. I worked for the cities of Santa Ana and Mission Viejo before I went to Huntington Beach, and I have never, in my 22-plus year career, have seen anything quite like this.
Okay. So, in your expertise, city manager, do you think this is a ramification of prior decisions done on the city council in having a two-tier system, that we've now reached a point where we're still down the path, that those 2 tiers are put us in a position where we're no longer competitive in the market?
From what I can tell, it's probably a combination. It's always, these things are always a combination of market conditions, deficits, and yes, more often a culture or philosophy of not reinvesting in employees, to be honest, and keeping up with the market comparisons, which we used to do. COSMA has experience with that. We were doing it on a regular basis. I think the Great Recession threw a wrench into everything for many, many cities. It looks to me like in some other cities, they started to rebuild slowly back. And in our case, it's taken us longer to get there. I think the key is to get there, right? And so I think I wasn't here, I'm not all sure about all the ins and outs of what happened. I've heard, different assessments of how we got to where we are, but I think the key is recognizing it and then doing it incrementally. You're just seeing the ones that, the HR team just is pulling their hair out about having to recruit constantly. There are others within, and you already approved a phase 1, this is the phase 2, and we'll continue to kind of look at this incrementally. But I think the key is to correct it as we go, especially in the areas where we know we can't do the work that you want us to do. It's so hard as a staff person not being able to perform at a high level for you. It really is. It's our passion. We love this work. You would only be doing it if you love this work. And we want to do it well, and but we need to have the tools to do it. Otherwise, we can't have the results for you, and it's not fulfilling when you know that you can do it if you could just get a good team. And so we need the tools to get the things that you want and for us to have the city that we want to have, because you have the vision that you have and the goals that you've put together are really exciting. And that's why people will get to the interview and they'll fill out the application. It's this piece that ultimately they decide they're not going to take a pay cut to come. And so we can't get experienced people. We have people coming in at more junior levels, and then eventually they move on. And so I can't really speak to what happened in the past, but I do know that we can make a difference and we can make it better. And again, we're not going to outperform Santa Ana at the top. We're not trying to get to the top bar. We just want to get to median. And then from there we can build. And I know that this is a heavy lift, if there are certain things that you think are better to come in the budget, then we're open to that. We just want to start correcting these. You've already helped to correct some of this, and we're not going to do it overnight, but I'm confident that we can do it. I'm happy to do it. I want to do that in tandem with you, and this team is committed to doing that. We just need your support to, have a little bit more incremental growth in this area, because we can't task departments to turn projects around and be responsive to the public when they don't have the people to do it and we can't get them in.
Yeah. I actually want to follow up on something you said, incremental growth. Because one thing that sticks out to me in this report is we're really targeting a lot of the positions that we know we need, right? We're targeting HR, we're targeting public safety, we're targeting finance and IT, critical infrastructures in our city that we've all acknowledged at some point in this dais are crucial to being a functioning city. And the one thing that sticks out to me is a lot of these positions we're putting on are part-times to full-time. Can you explain to me the process of going from why we chose to do a lot of part-time conversion to full-time versus outright full-time hires?
Well, I mean, that's our way of doing it. Actually, what we're doing is we're giving you the ability to say, to eliminate some of those part-time positions so that we can invest in the full-time. It's a more affordable way to do it because we've already absorbed the cost of the part-time position. And in some cases, some of these part-time positions are vacant. And so we're basically trading those in for a net neutral impact for it to be a full-time position, a new full-time position. In some cases, it's a part-time or that is good that we want to keep, and they're willing and able to do full-time work. And so we want to keep that talent that we've already invested so much time and energy into. So in some cases, we're giving vacancies to convert it to a full-time at a almost net neutral cost, not exactly, but very close. And in some cases, it's for that retention piece because we've already invested in someone and we could get more outcomes if we hired them full-time. So it's a combination. It's incrementally good because it's not as big of a hit to the budget. And in the case where the part-time position's filled, then we're going to hopefully make it a full-time position. We know that that person's good. We've invested training in them. They have the ethos and the culture that we want. And so we want to be able to keep them and not start all over again. Even in my office, we've had retirements and turnover, and it's tough for all the departments. And so, but part-time to full-time is easier to manage from a budgetary standpoint, which is why we're recommending that too.
Yeah, and I think I'm really glad you went into the detail of why we're going this route, because I think it's easy for us and the public to have concerns about, the pension liabilities and can we afford this, and I think knowing that we're doing this in a cautious but conservative way, where we're utilizing conversions to save some dollars to retain people we've already trained, that to me is intelligent. That to me is something that we have to be doing, because there's one thing that sticks out to me as a young person on this dais looking at the screen is we are essentially a training ground, and we're going to be a training ground, because this is something similar I've experienced in my career trajectory in my 5 years working out of college, is that there are some places you get your foot in just to get your foot into an industry. And what terrifies me is that our council is a very, very proactive council. We're a very ambitious council. I think that's the reason why we attract so many good people to come work in this city, because they like the vision we have and they like knowing we're going to solve and address issues. And what scares me is that we're not able to retain people that will become the next directors. We can't retain people that are going to invest their teeth into Costa Mesa and really make sure that our community gets the best service possible. So I appreciate you answering our tough questions. I know these aren't easy questions to answer. I'm seeing our staff and the public look at us, wondering how it's going to go. But I just want to say one thing, that on my end, at least, I understand that this is something we need to do to ensure the stability of Costa Mesa. And I'm very happy that we're doing it in a way that has the least amount of financial impact. So thank you.
And we're happy. We're happy to answer these questions. This is a great conversation. We don't, Mayor Pro Tem, I meant to mention that we have absolutely no aversion to the 5-year forecast. We're happy to do that. We've done that our entire careers, both Carol and I. We'd be happy to do that. We're not afraid of what it could show. Usually you show it with a plan. If there's a problem in the 5th year or the 4th year, we come with a plan and how we would manage that. Managing the budget is something that I'm hoping that we've proven to you that we can do. It serves us no purpose as your leadership team to come forward with a recommendation that's going to turn this budget upside down, and then we have to go back and cut it to save it. And so we feel like this is financially sustainable, but I understand that you need to feel that way, and so I'm hoping that you will. If there are certain portions of this that you feel comfortable with tonight, that would be fantastic. We could start making some headway, especially on these hard to fill. And if there are certain elements that you feel are more appropriate to talk about in the context of the budget, we're happy to do that too. And so I'm just glad that we can have the conversation, and that you're asking great questions, and that we can hopefully move forward in some of these areas, because it's just not going to be productive to continue to spend time and energy trying to recruit positions that we know we can't fill.
Okay, thanks. To the extent that there was any doubt about this, we're suspending the rule that we only ask questions during this time. So if there were council members who were adhering to that rule previously, it's off the table, and if you want to talk and make comments, you're welcome to do so. But let's go. Are you? I'm aware that there's a person out there in the public who I'm sure will comment. No, I know about all that stuff. Thank you, though, for reminding me. It never hurts to remind me, and it's not a problem. Okay, so thank you, Councilmember Gameros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a few questions here. I really don't know who to direct them to, but so using the key position market analysis principal planner here, your total rank compensation is number 6. hypothetically speaking, if we were just to say, here you go, we're going to give you guys everything you want, where are we going to be after this?
So the goal, the way that our compensation structure works is that if we give it the 20% increase, they will be at the 151,313, which would put them right between 3 and 4. Rank 3 and 4.
Between Huntington and Newport, basically.
So we'll be in the middle of the road.
Yep.
So does that mean we're going to be 10% below average if we're in the middle? I'm just guessing.
We'll be
here.
at average, exactly.
So we won't be
For
below.
now.
We'll be at 0.
We'll be at 0.
Okay. And then moving on, let's say we do that. We're in the middle. You got everything you wanted. How long is this going to last for? Is this a cure for, I know that you brought up a 5-year forecast. I don't know if this applies to that, but in my line of work, every 3 years, we have a contract negotiation and we're fighting for wages. So this is kind of like what we're doing right now. So are we going to be in the same mess 3 years from now? I don't want to call it a mess, but are we going to be 20% below average 3 years from now? Or how long is this going to last for?
It really depends on the contract negotiations with our unit here, other agencies' contract negotiations. It's hard to say if we give a 3% here, but the other agencies give a 4 or 5%, then now we've fallen maybe 2% behind. So it does change. As city manager mentioned, in the past, we used to do this market analysis annually. So we knew annually we were at market every single year. Typically, an agency, during contract negotiations, will look at the market to see where we're at when we're in those processes, but it can change. And it really, without knowing what the other agencies are going to do, it's hard to anticipate where we will be. But regular check-ins are always good.
Okay. So I asked this because the terms were used, cautious and conservative, and we're coming into this. If we keep coming into this cautious and conservative, we're always going to be 20% below average. Before we know it, we're always going to be losing people, yet we're always going to be cautious and conservative. So I just want to make sure that obviously we don't want to overspend, but if we're trying to nickel and dime every single person that comes in, we're always going to be behind and we're not going to have the retention that we need so that we can have growth within, the staff level here. So I just want to make sure that I obviously this is beautifully illustrated. You guys have really done your homework on this. My worry is that we're going to be behind again in a year or 6 months, or I don't know what it is. This is a mid-year. You call this a mid-year, staffing plan. So, what about the end of the year staffing plan or the beginning of the year staffing? Maybe you titled that for a certain reason. So, my concern is that we get everything that we need for you guys handled. I don't want to be too cautious and conservative because I don't want to have to keep revisiting pay increases every 12 months. Let's make everybody happy. Let's get this thing handled. Let's move forward. Obviously, we want to do our due diligence as a council, but on the same note, I don't want to nickel and dime this thing when we have the ability to fix it, make it worthy, make it last, and move on to the next issue, whatever that is. So, I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, but I do like this. I want to make sure that it's everything that you guys want so that we can move forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it's my turn. So I want to start with, I want you to understand part of this is mostly complimentary, but it's a little bit of constructive feedback. I thought that, Ms. Lee, your slides and your presentation was excellent. The dissonance that I kind of feel about the staff report that's been brought is this hard to fill phase appears on our 6th page of a 7-page report, and it's like 3 paragraphs. So it's in proportion to the time that was spent in the written narrative compared to what we've been talking about extensively and what you presented so well. It seems a little bit disproportionate, and same with the study session, which was also mentioned by Councilmember Harlan. It would have been good to kind of front load that. and so we would be in a better place. But you know what? Ultimately, it's there, right? I mean, your presentation and your slides are there, and so I appreciate them.
Yeah, appreciate the feedback.
Yeah,
And Mayor, that's my shortcoming.
I'm not here to. Nobody needs to apologize. It's just feedback, okay? Because I think it's kind of an explanation for some of the questions and some of the feedback you're getting from the council, for what it's worth. I want to answer Councilmember Chavez's question. The answer to your question is yes. You know what the question was. The answer is yes. We have on our slide, one of the reasons I'm suspending the questions only rules because I've got a lot of comments. We have on our slide number 27, and this is just one position, principal planner, but as been pointed out, we have the classic PERS tier 2 at 60, and then a 12% employee contribution rate. And those were negotiated in very, hard-hitting, arm's-length negotiations and collective bargaining. Prior councils, some of which I was a part of, particularly in my first 2 years, were very pleased and happy to extract that 12% number. And I think the number is even higher for some of the other bargaining units. If I'm not mistaken, the number's 14% for police and fire. We were very pleased by the employee contribution rate relative to our neighboring cities. We felt like we were very successful in those negotiations. I'm talking about the council. But sometimes you win the battles and you lose the war, and you have unintended or actually, kind of obvious consequences from that. It helps financially. I mean, I have in some respects, because perhaps that's one of the reasons we have a $2.8 million budget, is because our employees pay so much to their pensions. And every dollar paid by the employees is a dollar not paid by the city, and that rolls up, and maybe that's at least part of the explanation. It must be part of the explanation for why we have a $2.8 million surplus. Same, with 2 at 60. Now here they are, our employees are paying more money for an inferior product. That is a product. It's part of their compensation. They pay more money for less value. So indeed, it does put us at a competitive disadvantage. When I started on council, things were worse. When I started on council, these numbers were all variable numbers. So each time PERS increased, gave the city an increase, the employees had agreed to pick up 60% of that increase. And this number had ballooned to a number as high as 18% with respect to certain bargaining units, with no end in sight. Ms. Lee, you're nodding, you remember that. So one of the first things we did in 2017 was address that in our collective bargaining agreement with the miscellaneous group, and we established this fixed number, which was good, but it's still high relative to our other cities. And the consequence of that is we're not competitive we saw the consequence in the good slides that you did. So the answer to your question is yes. Councilmember Chavez, yes. Having said that, I've got a question for the city manager, finance director, and I guess whoever wants to answer it. So we've got 20 positions here that we're labeling hard to fill positions. We have 530 positions in the city. We're going to have more of those positions if we vote yes on the request for additional staffing heads. Those 20 positions to make the adjustments that you're saying adds up to $711,000, okay? What are the implications of voting for the increase with respect to these 20 positions on collective bargaining negotiations that we might have in the future that kind of cascade through all of the bargaining units?
I'll take that, and then Carol and Cosma, feel free to. So we're thinking about that, and we're looking at that. So the reason we're bringing this group to you is because they're at this 10, 15, or 20%. There are classifications that we have that are at market, right? So those, I think, we're feeling comfortable with those. Not every position in the city of the 530 has this level of discrepancy. We're bringing to you the most severe cases where these discrepancies are this significant, and we know that because of the fact that we can't fill them. But Cosma filled 89 positions last year, so there are still many other classifications. I think in certain bargaining groups, let's take, for example, public safety. When we negotiate those contracts, the last thing we want is the lowest paid police officers and the lowest paid firefighters, right? And so I think there are some negotiations where there's much more robust conversation around compensation, making sure that we're at or above market. Ideally, in some cases, we want to be even in that top tier. We want to be above the 50%. You'd like to be in that first quintile, that first quartile. And so I think that most cities, when they're negotiating, if you're a full-service city, a lot of the negotiations around those units is going to be a little bit more in-depth. And so we don't have discrepancies of 20%. In some of the miscellaneous classifications, you're going to see this kind of a dynamic, although not to this degree. And, those are smaller lumber classifications, and that's why we're bringing those forward. Now, does this mean that we don't need to do something citywide? No. So it would be misleading for me and Councilmember Gameros. I appreciate your support this evening. Potentially, but I do want to stress, because I need to be transparent with you, that this doesn't fix it all, and at some point there will be cities giving compensation increases, and we will need to negotiate some modest increases for the employees of some degree, and we're running estimates to see what those could be. We're hearing about cities that are entering into negotiating contracts. And so we need to be competitive. I don't want to do this and then fall to be 23, 24, 25% beneath. But again, we're bringing it to you in a measured way, slowly, very deliberate about what we're bringing forward. There are department heads that are not happy with this presentation because there's other classifications that we know. Custom has done the analysis. There's a whole other set, but I don't feel comfortable that we can absorb that at this time. And so I'm bringing to you the ones that I feel we will get the most advantage to the departments, the most positions filled fastest, the least headache for Kasama and her phenomenal HR team, so that they can move to the next recruitment and move to the next one. And so it's not the panacea, but it's a huge step forward. And we will be looking at those other issues and bringing something to you in the future. But with all of the information that you'll need to make that decision, the 5-year forecast and everything else, as we look at contracts that are being negotiated in other cities and look at how much our budget can afford. But we don't have 530 positions that are this far below market, not by any means.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, the question I have, a direct question, I don't know, maybe this is also the city attorney. So we talked about whether to use ARPA funds or not to use ARPA funds. That's the question. And so if we use ARPA funds on something, then can we take the money what happens to the money that we save? So like, let's say hypothetically, we use the ARPA funds for the 711 or the 1.1 million. And then is that just money that allows us to grow our reserves? Is that the way it works?
Essentially, what it does, it saves the general fund, right?
Right.
So it will, in essence, reduces the expense of the general fund against the revenues. So technically, depending on how the revenues end, correct, your reserves could technically increase.
Or we could use the money on something else that is not eligible for ARPA funds, like we've talked about, active transportation, things like that, capital improvement investments.
Correct, because the general fund is not restricted, whereas ARPA does have restrictions.
Okay, I got it. And we have to use these funds, so I figured if we use them in the next 3 years, it's 4.3 each year, including this year.
The ARPA funds have to be committed by December of 2024.
2024, have
Correct.
to be spent.
Have to be committed.
What does that mean?
That means it needs to be committed to it could be committed to either a project, as long as it's ARPA eligible, or it could be committed, in this case, to an employment that would be eligible, which that means as long as you can identify that those funds have been set aside for that expense, as long as you identify it through the United States Department of Treasury, you're good.
So it could be expended later, but as long as it's committed before.
Yes, but you don't have that much longer time to spend it. I mean, ideally, it is to spend it by 2024, so you don't get into those nuances, correct? But, per ARPA, it has to at least be committed, or you run the risk of having to return those funds, which we definitely don't want to be in that position.
Definitely not. Okay. Let's see if I have any other questions. A lot of them were answered. Okay. Oh, when you put up the slide that showed the percentage of the salaries for the budget, so 69% and it used to be 80%. Is there a target?
Not necessarily. There's not a target. It's just to show how the salaries have pretty much been reduced as a percent of the general fund. Even the general fund has grown significantly over the last 12 years. But salaries, in essence, have reduced as a percentage of general fund. The interesting part about that is that the dollars spent is slightly lower than it was 12 years ago on salaries.
Okay. So let's see. There's one thing else I wanted to say is, I think that all these discussions of pensions is a bit of a kind of a mysterious thing for a lot of people, including the council, including some of these slides. I mean, it's hard to understand, because we don't get it that much. It doesn't come up. So it would be really good to get, not now, but at some point in time, kind of a primer on pensions and what they're all about and what does it mean. And I'll give you an example. You put a slide up there. I think we may have, one of the members of the public may have done that slide, or maybe we did it, and it showed the increase in the pension expense over time. However, I happen to know, because of my study years ago, that the unfunded pension liability is amortized over 30 years. And so through that amortization, it's planned out that it's going to go up for a number of years, and then it's going to level out, and then for a number of years, and then it's going to go down for a number of years, and then it might go up more if the actuarial assumptions change, and it has to do with the discount rate, and it has to do with all kinds of other factors that are really kind of mysterious unless they're really broken down and explained. And I know I can't speak for the other council members, but I studied this a lot, I don't know, 7 years ago, and I don't remember a lot of what I studied. So I could use a refresher course, okay? Anyway, I don't have anything else. Second bite of the apple, which will be hear from the public. Let's open this up to the public.
Mayor, City Council members, thank you. Last week's study session, I commented that I'm not against growth or adding staff. I made the same comment at last week's 5-pack meeting. I'm not against growth or adding staff. I am, however, in favor of having as much pertinent information, including financial analysis, available before making decisions. Look at tonight. Some additional information was provided, both from a financial standpoint and staffing level, and what a great discussion was going on tonight. I get it. I'm not trying to dismiss the issues with salaries, the difficult hiring people. It's a difficult situation. I understand that. And I appreciate staff, again, providing some additional financial data. I've been lobbying for more financial data for a couple of years, and I'm lobbying for more financial information tonight. I know I showed or some of the similar data at our 5-pack meeting or the study session, and that's good information. History is good information, but it's history. What I'm talking about tonight is the future, and that's what I'm concerned about. And this is the way I think, which may scare you. The latest vacancy report shows 59 vacancies. Let's say you approve the 6 heads tonight, that's 60 open positions. The city will never get to full staffing. So let's say you fill 45 of those 60 positions at $100,000 a pop, which is low. Everything you saw tonight, an employee costs more than $100,000 a year, but just to make the math easy, use $100,000. $100,000 times 45, that's $4.5 million, and that is light. Can the budget afford $4.5 million year after year after year in the future? I don't know. I can't say. I'm not saying it can. I'm not saying it can't. There's a lot of demands on that budget. Some of them were mentioned by council members tonight. So I'm just saying, let's take a look at that. So far, positive results for the year. That's great news. I hope it continues, but 6 months is not a trend. Staff mentioned 2 strategic goals of the study session: recruit and retain high-quality staff, it was mentioned again tonight, and strengthen public safety and keep the community safe. Both excellent goals. Another strategic goal: achieve long-term fiscal sustainability. At one of the past goal-setting meetings, I heard a council member say, and I'm paraphrasing, that without fiscal sustainability, the other goals are in jeopardy or will not be met. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak to us?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, let's close public comment. And before I entertain a motion on this, I just had one question that I forgot. So, city manager, in last year's mid-year, these heads were added that we went over for the cannabis, extra cannabis staff. And then when we had our budget, I think we had about 11 additional positions that we authorized. I might be wrong, but it was roughly 11. And so now you're presenting to us, whatever, it's in the staff report, several additional positions. Is this it, or are we going to see another 11 positions in June, 3 months from now?
That's a great question. So the only positions that you'll see when we bring the budget are those that are filled with other funds, other than general fund. So for example, we have a couple of positions in public services that we'll request that are funded from non-general fund sources. And what else was there, Carol? I think there's 2 more part-time to full-time conversions, right? I think a permit processing specialist this was already a heavy lift. And so I think we are all in on this and have talked a lot about, if this is it, can we live with it? There would be challenges, but it's very minor what we would have coming forward, because this is really the bigger ask. So there's, I think, a part-time permit processing specialist for Jennifer and her team going to full-time. Steve has a management analyst that's half-C. She's the one who created the WaitWhile app that we've been using during COVID. We don't want to lose that position. making that full-time, and the office specialist, I think. They're small. What we could do is, again, we could bring back just the new positions piece to be in the context of the budget, so you could see it all together. Those other ones are minor in terms of the costs. The hard to fill, I think, for me as your city manager, the hard to fill dynamic is the one that it's crazy making. We're just spinning our wheels. We're not getting anywhere because of the classification mixes there. But with all the feedback tonight, we'll go back, we'll even take a look at those that we were thinking of bringing forward. We could maybe just do some additional consulting work. I'll share with you that one success of our effort so far is I think we brought like 6 amendments to an engineering contract because in public services, we were having trouble staffing. But since we've made some changes there in compensation, Raja was just telling me that we can cut that contract. Those are the kinds of things that we want to be doing, keeping the institutional knowledge in-house, having that work done in-house. Only specialized things should be outsourced. So we're going to see savings in other areas. But this is the bulk of what we want. But if you tell us that this is it and we can't bring anything else, then we'll figure it out. I will figure it out with the department heads. And if I have to offer that position in my department and you borrow her, then I'm willing to do that. So I think if what you're saying is this is it and we don't want to see anything else.
I just asked a question.
I'm just saying, we're desperate. And so
if you were my witness, I'd be kicking you under the table right now. All right? That's what I could say. So here, why don't you
stop.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Stop digging. And Council, Mayor Pro Tem Mar has.
Let me just save you while you're ahead. I'm not opposed to seeing additional things when we bring the new budget. I do want to just sort of like articulate very clearly the things that I would like to see if and when we were to see those additional things, and that is a deeper dive into vacancies, the positions that we're having a harder time filling, how long they've been vacant for, an understanding of who's a part-timer, how many part-timers we have, and again, what's our vacancy rate for part-timers, the 5-year forecast, and I'm fine if it's a sensitivity analysis and you give me 5 different versions. I would just like to see something. And then I'm feeling like I don't have, I can talk to you about this separately, but I don't have a good feel for what we should be spending ARPA money on, actually, after this conversation. Because on one hand, I'm like, oh, it's limited, it's going to run out, we should spend it on something. On the other hand, I don't want to get dependent on this money that we don't have on a regular basis. So it sort of feels like it's more suited for the one-time expenditures. Certainly before we, in the study session context as we come to the new budget, I would like to get a better feel for how we think we should be spending that. It sort of feels like we scattershot it over the budget last time. Let's put some in reserves just in case we need it in reserves. Let's add some in case we don't need it in reserves. I don't, and then we need a backfill for what we had before. I'd like a more clear sense of how we're thinking about use of that money over the next 2-3 years. I can't do the math in my head.
So
you don't have to answer that right now. I'm just saying that's how I feel.
So I just did want to clarify that the ARPA does not allow and to replenish reserves or to put money into reserves. So there are a lot of guidelines on what we cannot spend it on, and reserves is very clearly outlined in ARPA.
Wasn't it literally in one of your slides just now where you had $3 million in the reserves line?
That was part of the adopted budget. So part of the adopted budget, we came and we did a multi-pronged approach to balancing the current year's budget, assuming that the pandemic would have more of an impact on our revenues. So we had $3 million of reserves to use to help close the year and $6 million of ARPA. We eliminated the use of reserves for the general fund, and then we reduced the ARPA contribution.
Okay. All right. I need to see that on paper again because I'm not remembering correctly. Thank you. But clearly, I need to understand that more. So if we could do it in the context of a study session, I think that'd be helpful.
It's confusing. The ARPA funds, but we can give you what we spent what we did spend the ARPA on, which we had a little bit of a conversation about when we closed the last year, and then what we have and what we can spend it on. That's a good conversation to have in the budget.
All right, I'm prepared to make a motion. And if I say staff recommendation, which I'm reading here, what I want it to include is the hard to fill and all the positions that are requested. okay? Does everybody understand? That's my motion. Is that good enough, City Clerk? That's my motion. Do I have a second, Lauren? Okay, so we have a second by Councilmember Gameros. Now, why am I making this motion? First of all, I said that I do really appreciate the work that everybody did, and not only that, we didn't talk too terribly much about the additional positions because I thought that was very well covered, including by our police chief and our fire chief at the study session. So I incorporate all that into my reasoning. Focusing more, though, in my discussion on the hard to fill aspect of it, it comes down, I think, to just constituent services. Is we have to be competitive in recruiting and retention in order to deliver the city services that our constituents require. The feedback that I get from the constituents is issues of frustration with a lot of the planning department that is understaffed. We know that they're understaffed. We know that we're having trouble retaining them. We know that members of that department are relatively inexperienced relative to the people that left and have a lot left and took a lot of institutional knowledge, and some of them retired and some of them moved on because they got a better compensation package. And that undermines despite the hard work that they do, and it was all laid out, all the projects that they do by the city manager, they are behind the eight ball because of an issue of recruiting and retention. The other thing too is, I think it was, I can't remember, work harder, not smarter. Somebody up here other than me said that. Was that Harlan? I said work smarter. Smarter, not harder? Smarter, not harder? Yeah. Okay, smarter, not harder. Harlan said that. Okay. Not Harper, but Harlan. Anyway, that's true, and the problem, which was pointed out again by somebody up here, is when you have turnover and when you have inexperienced folks, then the more experienced folks have to spend more time training them, and then all that training goes out the door, and all the work that the more experienced people in the department do to train leaks out because they can't work on essential services for the constituent because they're spending their time training the person who's going to leave within 3 years. It is, as many people have said, systemic, and it's corrosive to constituent services. Now, as Mr. Tabota pointed out, that the most important of our 5 goals is long-term fiscal management. None of this what my motion is about does not suggest that that's not a commitment. It does not suggest that that's not a commitment on equal footing to our goal of recruiting and retention. But we have an extremely talented and extraordinarily talented resources as it relates to finance. I trust the city manager. I trust Carol Molina. I know that they can make the adjustments that they need to make if we can retain them. They can make the adjustments that need to be made, and they've proven that they can. So, like when I hire somebody at my law firm, and we say that's going to cost us a year's salary. Well, maybe, but maybe if it doesn't work out, it's a 2 months salary. You can make adjustments all along the way, and we do, and we will. We should do projections. I agree with that, but also projections are inherently speculative, particularly if they go out 5 years. They become less and less useful. I still think we should do them. But I'm confident that our management can make the adjustments necessary because I've seen them do it. during the pandemic. So anyway, those are all my reasons for the motion. I hope that I get support for it. Does anyone else want to be heard?
I do, Mr.
Oh,
Mayor.
sorry. Let's go with Councilmember Gameros first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I seconded this motion for a number of reasons. One of them is we need to look at this as we're not just spending money, we're investing money. We're investing money in the people that work to support this community. We're investing money in police and fire. The police and fire department are going to have a shared governance model that's going to increase or change our telecommunications model that's going to be really important for our emergency services crew. We're going to be able to help with what a lot of people classify as a new and emerging industry for cannabis. I know that I've heard Chairman DeArkel on the Planning Commission express concern that staff is going to be overwhelmed with too many different things, and they're not going to be able to comply with the needs of the industry for cannabis or other needs within the building department, new construction, road work, whatever happens. So when we move forward doing this, we have to remember that these are people, these people work, these people need to be compensated. If you're going to ask someone to go above and beyond what they're normally doing, we need to compensate.
You can do it.
We need to compensate these people, whoever they are. If it's new people, if we're trying to retain people, we don't want to lose people, we want to train people. So all these models that we're going to be moving forward with, we need to make sure that we invest in our community. And that's how I want to look at this. We're not spending money, we're investing money, and we in turn expect to have a very good operating model for our community. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Mar.
Yeah, so I'll be the first to recognize the hypocrisy of walking in with the good idea fairy tonight and then 2 hours later, grilling staff about how we're actually going to fund these things. That being said, I think this is the hardest part about what we do fundamentally, right? Because we all have great ideas. We all have ambitious things we want to accomplish. And then somehow we have to figure out how to pay for it. And I have many fine qualities, but city finance is not necessarily one of them. So I appreciate your patience with me as we work through this. I'll be supporting the motion. We need to do this to support all of those great ideas that we have. But I do worry about the systemic piece, and I worry about keeping this going for years to come. So we just have to keep all of that in mind and understand the context in which we're making these decisions. Thank you.
Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens, and I really want to commend both yourself and Councilmember Gameros for your strong comments. I wish I was faster with pushing the button. For me, it's very simple. I think this is the most effective approach to be conservative in our budget, because I understand the concerns council has mentioned and concerns from the public. We do not want to be put in a position where we're overhiring and cannot afford to pay for everyone. And that's why I'm really proud of our staff for being creative and finding ways to fit critical needs through conversions and being creative in combining roles and being creative in ensuring we're doing this in a way where we're not hiring 30 people at one go, but we're doing it bit by bit, every mid-year, every budget, making sure we're on a steady path and a consistent path to making sure we fit the needs of our constituents. And that's what it comes down to in the day, our constituents. It is our staff who implements the vision of the council. So in my eyes, they're the people that are most important in this facility. At the end of the day, in some capacities, we don't really see the things we vote on. It's staff that does. And there's one thing that keeps coming in my mind is I am really tired of businesses coming to me and contacting me saying they're having difficulties with planning because planning doesn't have enough people there. I'm tired of people hearing complaints that it takes forever to get a response back from someone because I know our staff's working hard. I see it every single day. They're dedicated, they're determined, they're working way beyond the hours they sign up for, and I appreciate that. And I think this is one way we can respect our staff and show them we care. There's one way we can respect our fiduciary interests and show the public that we're being cautious as we move forward. And more importantly, it's a way for us to show the residents we care about them because we're hiring staff to serve them better. So I think this is a great motion. I really appreciate the support that staff did in putting this presentation together. And I think the only thing I would add to critique for better in the future is moving forward, maybe let's have deeper discussions on study sessions on how it's going with hiring, on where we're at the market. That way, when we're voting on these things, we're more certain faster. Because I think all of us here understand the importance of this, and I think we're all ready to support this. And I just think that the more information we have, the more comfortable the council, the public, and staff will be. But this is a great motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Councilmember Reynolds? Okay, let's do Councilmember Harlan.
Hold on, I'll wait.
Oh, you want her to go first? There's a strategy behind it?
Yeah, there's lots of strategy. I'm gonna
Well, maybe
protect
you
this meeting.
All right. All right, Councilmember Reynolds has a hot mic. You have the floor.
Use the mouse. Is that, okay, thank you. Multi-talented staff here. We have our city attorney fixing IT issues. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to support the motion. I think our study session was a really good conversation. I think tonight was a really good conversation. I appreciate the all of the work staff did between these two meetings to pull this information together. And I think the numbers we saw tonight can serve as a really good baseline as we track some of the recruitment and retention sort of challenges and results going forward. I liked the word that Councilmember Gameros used as you know, an investment, right? Looking at this as an continued investment in the improvements that we are trying to make as a city council and implement as our city staff. I'll spare you guys all the analogies I've been thinking about. I think I've only been on one council, but I get the impression that we're in a council that has an unusual appetite for information. We really like to, I'm just, guessing. But I respect that a lot about our council and definitely respect our staff for having good answers. I think that shows our diligence in this job, right? We are digging into the details. We want to make sure that the projects that we're supporting and the money that we're approving is aligned with the goals and is something that we can explain to the public as well, right? In terms of how the decisions that we're making support those goals that we have. So I think you heard tonight interest in more information as we continue budget conversations, right? And I trust, given what we've seen from staff, not just since last meeting, but over the last several years, trust that you will continue to, anticipate sort of our need for information, and we'll have an even more robust conversation as part of the budget process. So my thought process kind of goes to two things: is how do I want you all spending your time between now and then, right? It's not to pause this and get more information before we advance this, but to roll what you've learned tonight in terms of what we want to see going forward into the budget planning process, and then sort of keep moving forward in all of the great work that you're doing. I know probably all of us, right, have had our personal experiences with the Great Resignation, and I know there's probably nothing more deflating than having people join your team and then leave your team. And so, in addition to the time and cost associated with that, I know there's a real emotional toll associated with that. And because of that, absolutely, it's something we need to fix. So thank you for the information you pulled together since our last meeting. Thank you for being very, very responsive to our questions. I think your answers to our questions tonight gave me a lot more confidence moving forward, and I trust that we'll continue to have really robust conversations as we get to the sort of full budget just a few months away. So thank you.
The closer will speak now. Councilmember Harlan.
No. Well, I will be supporting this motion, and I do appreciate what I think genuinely say was a very robust conversation tonight on the topic. I, like the mayor, have full confidence in our city manager and our finance department, and in particular our finance director. I trust that what's being presented to us is workable and has been thoroughly vetted. Moving forward, however, I really think that we need to be much more creative about how to do this, because clearly we haven't been able to succeed in this over the last couple of years, and by that I mean recruitment and retention. So in as much as the market adjustment for the hard-to-fill positions may be helpful, I think it's worth spending some time, and I certainly know that I'm going to be giving a little bit of thought to this, on what are other potential incentives, whether it's housing incentives, wellness incentives, something that really does underscore the values that we have here in Costa Mesa and the value proposition of working for the city, that people can't find anywhere else. I mean, we like to say Costa Mesa is very eclectic. That has both its good and its bad, but I think that's something we should continue to promote, and what we have to do for hiring should reflect that as well.
Okay, I think everybody's had a chance to express themselves. Let's call for the question.
Okay, good. Motion carries 6-0.
All right, motion carries 6-0. Excellent. So we don't have any further business tonight. Do any council members have any comments that they wish to make that they didn't get off their chest in the opening comments?
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Reynolds.
I like Mayor Pro Tem Mar's wild idea from the beginning of this meeting. I think that fits in well with what Councilmember Harlan just shared about some creative ideas as well for budgeting. So I'll just leave it at that. No surprise there.
Anybody else? Okay. Oh, Councilmember Chad? No? Okay, we're good. All right, wonderful. We're adjourned.
Mayor, may I thank?
Oh, yes.
May I thank Cosima? And
Oh,
the
of
whole
course,
team,
yeah.
and
You
Alma
can thank
and
Cosima.
and her team. Cosima was working on this till 2:00 in the morning last night, and she's just been extraordinary during this whole process. And so thank you, Cosima, for all the work that you did, Alma, Hadassah for the beautiful presentation, Carol for all the numbers, and all the departments too. Thank you. And thank you, council. You don't know how much this means to us.
Yes, you did a really good job, and you should come present to us more often. All right, thank you. We're adjourned.